council meeting. We're going to start with a roll call vote. We just came from closed session. City Attorney, do you have anything to report?
Actually, I have the city clerk. Can you do roll real quick before the report?
So we'll do roll. Anne Marie?
Councilmember Jones. Here. Councilmember Kemp. Here. Councilmember Whalen.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Orgill.
Here.
Mayor Renagi.
Here. Now, Mayor Pro Tem Orgill, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? City Attorney, are there any announcements from closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council convened in closed session pursuant to the 3 items listed on its agenda. There was no public comment in advance of the closed session meeting. They recessed into closed session at 3:45 and, convened at 3:45 and recessed at 5 o'clock. No reportable action was taken.
Thank you. And then, so now we have some presentations, and we are going to move them a little bit around in order. We're going to start with the Laguna Dance Festival and then get our legislative update from Diane Dixon. So Joy, can you and whoever you want to have come up join me at the podium?
We don't say anything. No.
Unless you want to. So it's an exciting day. We're here to recognize the 20th anniversary of the Laguna Beach Dance Festival. I'll give you this. So I'll read through a couple of the items. Whereas the Laguna Beach Dance Festival, founded here in Laguna Beach in 2005 by Jody Gates, has been a vital and vibrant cultural celebration in our community for 2 decades, enriching the lives of residents and visitors through the art of dance. Whereas the Laguna Dance Festival has provided a platform for local, national, and international dancers to showcase their talents, fostering an appreciation for the diverse styles and traditions of dance. Whereas the Laguna Dance Festival has inspired and engaged people of all ages through educational programs, workshops, and performances, cultivating the next generation of dancers and dance enthusiasts. And therefore, I, Alex Renagi, as the mayor of the city of Laguna Beach, proud to proclaim the year 2025 as the 20th anniversary of the Laguna Beach Dance Festival. We encourage all residents and visitors to join in celebrating this remarkable milestone. We look forward to the next 20 years. So thank you. So let's do a picture.
Oh,
We'll get our state representative out and make a picture even better. So next up, we're honored to have our state representative here from located in Newport Beach, but representing us in Sacramento, Diane Dixon, who will provide a legislative update. So thank you so much for being here and for all that you do for our community. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always a pleasure to be in Laguna Beach, and it's one of my favorite cities. It's like you can't choose your favorite child. So it's one of my favorite cities, and it's neighboring Newport Beach. So it's a pleasure to be here again. And so thank you for inviting me. The purpose of my presentation is just to give a brief update of what is going on in Sacramento. And there's a lot going on. And since we last talked, I've now started my 2nd term, so I'm honored to serve the people of Assembly District 72 and the people certainly of Laguna Beach. We were sworn in on December 2nd, I believe, and I did introduce 2 bills at that time. AB 3, so that one has been numbered, and that relates to an issue that's important to many of my cities in my district related to sober living homes and alcohol and rehabilitative facilities. And what makes, I believe, my bill special is that as a result of an audit that I requested in my first few months serving in the legislature back in 2023, to have the state auditor audit the situation with alcohol and rehabilitation facilities. I've learned a lot because of that, the results of that audit, which were publicly released last October. And without getting into all the detail now, there are opportunities to give, and this is my intent really, first intent is to make sure people are getting well and getting rehabilitated in these facilities. That's first and foremost. But secondly, to give control back to local government to code enforce on some of the issues that our residents are concerned about, but mainly is to make sure that the people that live in these different facilities are rehabilitated. Probably the most glaring result of that audit and the results are that they're not very well regulated. And only one aspect of there's two agencies, the Department of Healthcare Services will license a alcohol and drug rehabilitative facility, but it is not a facility that provides medical care. A lot of people don't realize this. It's licensed. And the state of California licensed them up to 6 beds, but does very little monitoring. I mean, they monitor the fire system and various code enforcement issues related to building codes and whatnot. So that was revelatory to me. And then also the Department of Social Services, a separate department that I'm going to this year introduce a bill to have an audit of what the Department of Social Services does on the medical, because they provide the medical facility services and dispense pharmaceutical drugs. And then there's a term that we all use loosely, including myself, sober living homes. Those homes, just for everybody's information, because I did not know this until the audit results came through, nobody regulates sober living homes. They're not licensed, they're not certified, and local cities have no control over them. So that, I've got my work cut out for me for the next several years, getting my arms around this. But my bill, back to my bill, AB3, a finding of the original law that released, that closed all of the state's mental facilities, and Governor Reagan signed this bill, giving local governments the authority to help people get well and rehabilitated, was to deinstitutionalize people in these facilities. Well, what we have found across Orange County and actually across the state is that there have been operators, and there are many good operators, but there are many not so good operators that are buying up neighboring adjacent properties and in effect reinstitutionalizing these people who are seeking help. And they've created institutions, once again, even though they're not in one common roof, but they're in commonly located, co-located facilities. And that is what my bill will address, that is contradictory to the original intent of the original law that released people from mental facilities. A lot to come on that, but a long-winded answer, but people are always asking me about sober living homes. I don't hear that much from Laguna Beach, but with Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, and then outside my district, Mission Viejo and Anaheim. So this is good because I will be working with representatives for all those cities. This year, I'm on a number of committees in Sacramento, but the two committees I chair, Judiciary, I continue on that committee as I served on that committee for the first 2 years. And then a new committee, Privacy, I vice chair, Privacy and Consumer Protection. That committee is going to be very active. It was last year. I served on it about 6 months last year and continuing this year. AI, artificial intelligence, is certainly a big issue in state and national government. So that's going to be very important. So I look forward to increasing my knowledge on artificial intelligence. There's just a lot going on there. Oh, thank you. Just to recap, I like to tell this story because it really is a bipartisan point. For the past session that ended last August 31st, the governor signed 668 Assembly bills and 349 Senate bills. That was just from one session. There were 2,200 bills on his desk, or close to 2,200. I have an opinion about that, too many bills, and I'm not the only one that has that opinion. In fact, former Governor Brown said in 2016, when he was, in this case, vetoing one of his final bills, he said, "Not every human problem deserves a law." I think he's correct. He also said, I don't think I have it quoted here, but in other words, too many laws require too many regulations that cost too much money. So I quote former Governor Brown because I think those were well stated. As a result, it's not just for myself, but others have said too many bills. And this year, every member of the legislature in the assembly is limited for this 2-year session, a total of 35 bills. So 17 or 18 this year and 17 or 18 next year. So we'll see how well everybody follows that because frankly, there's just too many bills. I serve also on appropriations, and nearly every bill has an appropriation or a request for state funding. And I have the opportunity by serving on that committee to actually read practically every bill. So it's about over 4,400 bills I've read in the last 2 years. I don't know anybody who reads that many bills other than the members of appropriations because you have to read them. And there's just too many bills and not enough discussion, not enough debate, in my opinion. But it's kind of a bipartisan issue. There's just too many bills. I talked about my ACA 3. Oh, I did also which I'm going to be announcing next week. I have a House resolution in recognition of National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And that was a resolution to raise awareness of human trafficking. It's terrible, horrible issue, obviously, but happening right here in Orange County. What I've learned a lot about human trafficking over the last 2-3 years now because of our hospitality industry, which is all good, great for local economy, but in proximity to Anaheim and amusement parks, it's a problem. And if you were to ever have an opportunity to talk to anyone from law enforcement, Sheriff Barnes for the county, he can give a county perspective on this. It is just shocking. And the number of, well, it's not even an accurate number of human trafficking victims in California is in the thousands. But my point is to get into this, it's just one is too many. So Sacramento has a big problem, shockingly, that I've learned about human trafficking. There have been 2 bills that finally made it through the legislature. Shannon Grove from Bakersfield worked 5 years on these bills for the victim to decriminalize the victim of human trafficking because they get involved in criminal activity. And then secondly, she had a bill that passed, thankfully, with a lot of public attention given to it, the person who's buying the services of the young person who is in the victim of trafficking. So we're coming at it from several different ways. I will have a human trafficking bill. I do have this resolution, but I'm just getting into this, and it's just shocking. Another issue that is not so much shocking, but is of concern to all of you because you are in a highly visible wildfire area. I talked to Councilmember Bob Whalen last week, and I've talked to your city manager, Dave Kiff, on wildfire issues, and I'm pleased to tell you that I do have a bill. It doesn't have a number yet, but it's been submitted, and it will become a bill, and a part of a package of wildfire-related bills that our caucus is putting forward, and the other caucuses as well. A lot of bills on wildfire. But interestingly, fuel management, prevention, mitigation is never, it's until sadly, the Palisades fire, that term was really not well understood. Fuel management means the shrubs, the flammable brush and such that catches fire and spreads fire easily. So my bill, and I know Laguna Beach, we've talked about this in prior meetings, has the issue on the hills, obviously, but I will address it from a coastal zone along the coastal zone, so it affects the entire coastal zone. And the good news is that the governor has, as you've probably read, voiced in strong terms that CEQA and the coastal zone are to be exempt from the permit requirements for construction and reconstruction. And this bill would be exempted, my bill would be exempted from Coastal Commission review and permitting to expedite. I actually have given the story that I learned that you were successful in getting a permit several years ago and you wanted to continue the work and you can't get another permit. I mean, that's just crazy. So a lot of tension has been brought now on fuel management. Many of my colleagues and all colleagues who live in Northern California, as Orange County has had many wildfires, Northern California has many wildfires, and the budget allocation for fuel management, wildfire mitigation has been reduced every year. Sadly, now a lot of folks are realizing that's probably not good, and we need to augment that policy. So my caucus introduced last Thursday a $1 billion amendment to the governor's funding bill of $2 billion for relief that we're getting largely from the federal government. And it was defeated for about $1 billion for fuel management and wildfire mitigation. We still are going to work on it and just kind of take the partisan politics out of this. Also, when I talked to Councilmember Whalen, I got an answer back from Orange County Fire Authority, and they do have plenty of super scooper helicopters. We just need to make sure they know you need them. So they've gotten an allocation because I learned this. They have to have a duplicate vehicle for every purchase. So there's 2 of everything. And they assured me that Laguna Beach will be covered. But I told them I was going to be presenting today, and they will keep me honest. They have enough helicopter scoopers. So then to protect all of you. Let me see what else. I know I only had a few minutes, but those were the highlights. I'm here in Laguna Beach, but serving in Sacramento to help you. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. And, and I enjoy nothing more than to respond to constituent requests. I have my staff member, Kristen Valendi here, and she heads up my district office. I'm very proud of the work we do. We have great systems. Actually, all legislators have good systems to respond to constituent requests. Funnily enough, the other than wildfire issues, which are really paramount right now, but the largest issues we have to mediate relate to Caltrans. Just personally, people say that their repairs that need to be made in their streets, and it takes a long time for Caltrans to respond. But what I've learned, because I didn't know this till I got to Sacramento, that there is an ombudsman in every agency that responds to legislative requests. So if you just speaking to your constituents and residents of Laguna Beach, if they have specific problems, let me know, and we will get right to that ombuds. But franchise tax board and the unemployment issues for people, I'm always pleased to get copies of letters that somebody write to one of my staff members to say, thank you. I've been trying to deal with EDD for a year, and they got their check. So these things the government works when you press them. So I'm pleased to help my constituents and your residents have a good quality of life when it comes to dealing with state government. What we are doing in Sacramento right now is wildfire management. The governor has presented his preliminary budget, but that was before the fire started. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of adjustments being made. And at the same time, there's always people in Sacramento every day. There are various groups and constituencies they're in Sacramento for their legislative days. And the community college districts were up today's Tuesday. And all good people, good hearts, they want to improve what they're doing at the community college level and getting the resources they need. And I said, are you asking for money? I don't know if there's going to be any money. I really don't. And as a legislator, before we had a deficit last year, but my first year in 2023, I was able to help Laguna Beach on some beach repair for handicapped access. And I was very pleased to help our cities. And then the wall came down, and there are no requests being granted until we got the deficit. So the governor introduced a budget that allegedly is so far budget balanced, but he's borrowing from reserve funds about $7 billion. So technically that's not budgeted, a balanced budget. But in any event, I don't know if there'll be many funds to give back to capital programs and requests from cities, which is always good that we like to do. But my long-term goals are always my platform is I'm a very strong advocate for small business, for local control, for common sense, and now protecting our citizens with wildfire management. And that's that's nonpartisan and the right thing to do. But local control remains and small business and business generally I do quote Elon Musk. There was a biography written about him about a year ago, and he's quoted as saying when he was moving his second manufacturing plant from California to Texas, he said, California over-litigates, over-regulates, and overtaxes. Regardless of your party, political party, it's not a political statement, it's true. I'm trying to simplify wherever I can, and one way for one legislator to address those issues. There's not many business people in the legislature, sadly, and they really don't understand, many of the people don't understand how business needs to grow and operate and create jobs and help the state and solve our funding problems. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for your time. And I don't think there's time for questions, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
I just want to thank the Assemblywoman. She is always available. Whenever you reach out to her, she'll get back to you right away. Very responsive. Thank you, Diane. And we look forward to working with you through the legislative
I
session.
look forward to it.
Particularly on the wildfire.
Absolutely.
But one thing that we couldn't agree with you more on is local control. Sacramento can't solve every problem. In fact, we'd like to solve more of them here.
I just say no more. That's why I ran for office. No more mandates. Well, thank you all and have a good session. Thanks so much.
Let's do a group
Any
photo.
more questions? All right, thank you.
Let's do a group photo with her.
Group photo. Sure.
With all five of us and you, does that work? Okay.
He taught me how to be a good city councilor.
Are you able to do the part? Oh, yeah, I'll call it. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Liz from Public Works, who's going to talk about our green business certification recognition. Liz, take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, we are recognizing 10 businesses that have met the California Green Business Certification Network certification and recertification requirements. The Green Business Certification Program is managed by CRNR as part of their franchise agreement with the city. These businesses have gone above and beyond to implement programs to conserve our natural resources. For example, these businesses have installed LED lighting, participates in the city recycling and organics programs, installed low-flow aerators for faucets provided by the Laguna Beach Water District, reduced use of disposable paper products, and used products from recycled materials, locally sourcing products as well. Switch to eco-friendly cleaning products, use Star Energy efficient appliances and equipment and computers, signed up for 100% renewable energy, and installed a water filtration system to refill reusable water bottles. So at this time, I would like to acknowledge the businesses and representatives that are here today. So please come forward as I call your name and your business. Here with us tonight is Nuance Home, and the retail director, Daniel Rees, is here today. Maya Dune and Associates, they have the recertification. And we have Principal Maya Dune. We have Merkababe Designs, unfortunately, with owner Carly Tuway. We have Modern Studio, and the owner Heather Bedford is here today. The Salt Horse Shop, Samantha Savage Brett, the founder and manager. Now we have the Voice of Laguna radio show. Owner and founder, Ed Steenfeld. I would like to mention 3 businesses that couldn't make it here tonight, but I want to acknowledge them. The Apartus Astrology, and the owner is Julia Martello. Oh, she's here. Okay, I did call you. I'm sorry. I was told you weren't here. Okay. Hobie Surf Shop, they got their recertification. And Adobe by Garage Collective with owners Kristen Lewis and Jamie Saunders. So congratulations to you all. Oh my gosh, okay. It's on my list. I am so sorry. The Laguna Beach Historical Society, Chris Collate. The Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you.
We made it through presentations. So now we're gonna,
Mayor, we've got one more presentation from SACWA. Amber Baylor's here.
how could I
from-
forget soccer?
Yes,
Go
from
ahead.
the acting director,
Thank
general
you, Amber,
manager.
for
I'm
being
sorry,
here.
for SACWA.
Hi, very brief update. My name is Amber Boone. I am the acting general manager for the South Orange County Wastewater Authority. I just wanted to provide this quick update on a presentation we also provided to the South Coast Water District. If you can go to the next slide. What I'm wanting to relate to the community members as well. Historic signing ceremony occurred on December 9th, 2024. This represented a very large reorganization of my organization and really represents a good story and good governance and cooperation among 6 different member agencies. So next slide, please. And Mayor Renagi was there, so thank you for representing the city of Laguna Beach. So I wanted to just provide you all with this quick update. We are moving forward in the process of a master planning scoping and RFP process for the development of the coastal treatment plant. This is a very expansive process that should be completed in the next 6 months. And so I did want to really thank Councilmember Whalen and Assistant City Manager Curran for their continued support and direction, and also in the engagement throughout this process. It's pretty involved, and so I just wanted to come here, give this update, and thank you all for your support. So that's all, unless you have any questions.
Amber, just thanks for coming. I've been briefing the council a little bit, but Amber just kind of jumped in as interim general manager just a few months ago, and she's really moving the process along quite expeditiously. So thank you for that. As I said at our meeting last week, I guess it was, our community is really focused on moving ahead with the coastal treatment plant reimagining so we can, get that in place and reduce ocean impacts. So we look forward to
Absolutely.
working with you on
Yeah,
that.
thank you. I appreciate that. We're happy to serve the city of Laguna Beach, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amber.
Great.
Appreciate all that you guys do, especially over the last, a couple of years ago, SACWA was all about litigation and battles, and now it's about cleaning the ocean water and recycling water. So that's a testament to Bob and a testament to you and all the people who are involved. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look forward to continue serving the city. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, we will take public comments on our city manager. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, just the one that you mentioned where the Arbor Day item should be moved to a consent item.
Okay.
That's all we have.
And so at this point, we will take public comments for non-agendized items. Who would like to speak? If you could raise your hand. Okay, so we'll do 3 minutes. So please come to the podium.
Hello, my name is Michelle Heiberg. I'm a 35-year resident and community volunteer, and I'm here again to discuss the Emerald Ribbon Project, which I brought up last time. We had this at Farmers Market. We were making gifts for the Los Angeles teenagers who lost their homes as well for mental wellness. And I'm just in awe of our city. And you must be super excited to be in the roles you're in right now during this historic time. But what I learned on this journey is that there are a lot of opinions. There are a lot of great ideas. And we do a great job of talking here, but we could talk for years. And I'm concerned that we're living during a historic time and that it's time to bring everyone together more. So I made a little plan bringing in all of the opinions I've heard in different parts, and I'm presenting it to council members, bringing in everything that's going on with other organizations as well. And I'm hoping that we might have your support for this project and all the other projects, and also consider helping our wildlife in case of fire, and perhaps even bringing Chris Spitaleri on board to assist the fire department. He's already been working with them for 3 years after stopping the fires. So that's part of this. So I'm sharing it. As well, I'm sharing the Emerald Ribbon Project flyers. Again, this is not about any one organization. We're hoping for the city's support. I mean, Hallie, I'm so grateful you're here with environmental stewardship, and Sue, you've been such a stellar mayor, and you're, now in your role and you're able to continue your leadership. Alex, you've had wonderful leadership, Mayor Runagi, excuse me, with the fires so far, and I've been so impressed with everything that I've read. And Council Member Orgel, thank you for helping all the nonprofits and caring so much about the sanctuary. And Councilmember Whalen, thank you for all the work that you're doing with the undergrounding. So all of that is in part of the plan. So I hope we might all work together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, council members. Thank you, Mayor Runagi. At Voice of Laguna, starting tomorrow morning at 7, we're hosting a 24-hour radio telethon to benefit the victims of the recent wildfires. And we're doing this through redcross.org. There's going to be testimonials, interviews, stories of people affected by the wildfires, as well as our usual most eclectic programming and music. We might even pull Frank Sinatra out to rejoin Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Who knows? You can catch it on, you can catch Voice of Laguna on iHeart, Apple Music, Alexa, or voiceoflaguna.com. Once again, from 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, 24 hours until 7 o'clock on Thursday. So thank you all very much.
Good evening, Council. I'm Mayor Runagi and the rest of you. I'm talking to you tonight about the project that's been going on for years now out at El Toro to the 73. And the reason I'm bringing it up, and I did reach out to Mayor Runagi and Councilmember Whalen about this, as well as Mark McAvoy from the city. That is a bottleneck out there, and with the recent events in Los Angeles, if we had a serious emergency here in Laguna Beach, and we had a heavy traffic day, which is most days in the canyon, I'm really concerned that because that's an ongoing project, it was entitled by the Planning Commission, which I was on at the time, had to have been at least 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer. The project got started. It's now a bottleneck. It's got the K-rails on the west side. There's no shoulder on the other side. And if we had a serious emergency that required other municipalities to send fire trucks and water trucks down here, I'm afraid they would get bottlenecked there and may not get through. So what I'm asking council and Mark, of course, from Public Works, is to put as much pressure on Southern California Edison initially to get the poles down, so that Caltrans can finish the project, because it's been going on way too long. And I'm afraid that if we had a serious problem here, it would not only hamper the emergency vehicles, but we would have one less escape route to get out of town. So anything the city can do to put pressure on Southern California Edison as well as Caltrans to finish the project, it's way overdue as far as I'm concerned. And we're at serious risk by any delays that they are causing us to finish this project. So I don't know if there's anything council can do to put some pressure on them, but the sooner the better. We'll all be safer if we can have that road open and functional in case of an emergency. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joy Berry, and my background is developing and operating resorts and hotels. And lately, it's been in the glamping industry where we are subject to wildfires. And I had the unfortunate experience in 2019 to evacuate a resort and with 200 people, children, adults, and some animals. We were successfully able to get everybody out safely, but I learned a lot of information. And in the glamping world, we are also prone to it. We're working on standard operating procedures for safe evacuation, working with neighbors. I've started putting together a list of ideas after watching what happened in LA. And I'd like to share my experience or offer it up. I'm not sure if I should offer it to you, to the city manager. I'll put together a list of emails, but if I can offer my services and my experiences, I'd like to help. And, I'm really grateful for a couple of you went up and learned from the cities. We need cooperation from our neighbors because I learned the only way I got my guests out was through cooperation of neighbors. They can make or break our lives. So thank you. And if I can help or give you my list, I will do so. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Council. Les McCloskey, top of the world. Some of us were present during the '93 fire. So I brought a poster board with a lot of photographs on it. There's some amazing pictures here. And so I figured when you get to 16 tonight, you have a poster board, something to look at. Where could I put this that might be useful to everyone? Up front. My folks were evacuated to Dana Point, but only after we had to break a lock on the fire road going out of Molten Meadows because nobody had the key. So I appreciate what was the effort that was gone into 16 and itemize a lot of the things that we still need to do. A lot of the items have incompletes and they need to be pushed forward a bit. But there's a visual for the presentations tonight. And I hope we all learned from this '93 and what we're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak? Kathy?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Yerka. It's nice to see you. I had a PowerPoint, but I'm not going to show it. I just wanted to say that as someone who lives half-time in Pasadena, which is adjacent to Altadena, and who has many friends and colleagues who lost their homes, I'm really moved by the compassion and the generosity of Laguna, just across the board. And I wanted to say that as a resident of Laguna, as someone who also just has deep, deep connections to Los Angeles. I also wanted to add, it being me, I can't help but add this. I did want to say that regarding Governor Newsom's exemption of rebuilding from CEQA and the Coastal Act, I think it's just important to keep in mind that that rebuilding in disasters is already exempt from CEQA and the Coastal Act. It has to follow certain parameters, like you can't expand the footprint enormously. It's designed to, you can build more or less what you had. And so I just always worry about the kind of opportunity to kind of blame CEQA for everything that's happening in housing. And I think there are certainly issues around CEQA, but it is designed to get people who lose things in a disaster up and going again. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have one more public comment. Is this the last speaker So we'll close public comment on non-agenda items after Pat speaks.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm compelled to say we need CEQA reform. You know, our ex-governor, Jerry Brown, said it's the Lord's work, and that's over 25 years ago. Our current governor, the first thing he did after this fire in north of us was talk about CEQA and how the bureaucratic red tape is out of hand. And they've been talking about it for decades. Nothing's been done. I think it's an ideal opportunity to reach out to our elected officials and see if we can move something forward in a positive way. Thanks. Thank you again for your time and your effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn it to our city manager for comments.
Council, I don't have any new comments. I'll look forward to talking with you about some of the agenda items tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones.
No.
Councilmember Kemp.
No, I have some items, but I'm going to talk about it on one of the consent items.
Councilmember Whalen.
Nothing tonight.
Mayor Pro Tem.
My usual list.
Go ahead.
I'll run through here real quick. My meetings were with Mike Mariner, the board of Visit Laguna. We also had a board meeting. We had a Promenade resident meeting. I've met with Kathy Yerka, Tom Lamb, James Henry, and at the Rivian Theater regarding using the theater for Heritage Month. I did a downtown walk around with Dave Kiff, Mark McAvoy, and Tom Perez. We had a water board meeting. I've met with Joanna from the Surf and Sand, John Zigowitz, Armando with the Montage, and Emma York with Visit Laguna.
And then Councilmember Kemp, you had something to
Yeah,
add.
this is just a reminder that we have a meeting on the Promenade, a community workshop on Tuesday, February 4th, here in the council chambers from 6 to 8.
Perfect. And then I will just say pursuant to AB 1234, I attended the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C., and it was a very productive experience. There were several Orange County mayors there, including the mayor of Newport Beach, Joe Stapleton, the mayor of Costa Mesa, Dana Point, Santa Ana, and Anaheim, other cities as well. So it was a great experience to collaborate with, to have discussions with Orange County mayors about what they're doing, but also there were mayors from across the country. So I found those discussions to be valuable. The former president, that was one of his last speeches, was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So that was interesting to see. And then as part of my trip, I was able to be a part of a roundtable discussion with several California mayors and our two senators, Senator Schiff and Padilla. And the issue that I raised was, of course, wildfire safety and the experience that I had going with our city manager and our chief to see firsthand the devastation in the Palisades and making the case for changing the regulations relating to how grant funds are dispersed for undergrounding to make it where cities can provide the matching fund instead of having to wait on the utility. And so there was a lot of interest in that, and our lobbyist is going to work with them on hopefully some regulatory changes that can help us achieve our fire safety goals. So the one announcement I have is that on Friday at 8:30 a.m. we will have our annual strategic planning meeting. That'll be an all-day event, and we encourage members of the public to be a part of that process. As what I think the way for us to be a really effective organization is to provide clear policy direction from the council so staff can implement it, and then we hold them accountable to doing just that. And so when we have, I'm looking forward to our city manager presenting our strategic planning efforts so that we can really get focused, because you can only do so many. You can try to do everything, but then you're not going to accomplish anything. So the key is for us to prioritize and make choices as we deal with the many challenges that we face here in Laguna Beach. So with that, we'll move to the consent calendar. Are there any items that any council members or members of the public would like to pull?
16.
10.
10, 16. Any other items from members of the public? Sir, can I get a motion on the balance?
Move the balance of the consent calendar.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, item 10. Bob, do you want a staff report on that?
Well, I don't need a staff report on it, but I do have some, I would like to engage in some discussion on
Okay.
it. But
So should we have staff?
yeah, I don't know
I don't know if
who's
that'd
here
be
to,
Public Works or?
looks like Mark, maybe.
They're coming up.
Hey, Tom. So, I just wanted to have a little bit more conversation on this, for a couple reasons, really. I see the staff's recommendation not to proceed or, not to proceed further with it. And I see a number of the key findings. I understand that this would require, an easement clarification, either a grant of an easement or clarification of an existing easement and so on. But, so I have a couple of thoughts on it that I wanted to bring up and get council's reaction to. But, I mean, it seems to me that the easement is one issue, but if we assume that the easement could be worked out and obtained, then the actual project itself, I see the budget for it, but I mean, it's a feasible project to construct, right? I mean, with the recommended trail, it utilizes steps and techniques that have been utilized in other places, I think, in the parks. But maybe staff could speak to that a little bit in terms of your thoughts. I mean, to me, it's a two-part, and if you bifurcate the easement, then I guess maybe you could focus on what your thoughts are on the project itself, the physical project.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Tom Perez, city engineer, and with me, Yan Lee, a project manager for the project. So the project, the construction of the project, yes, is feasible. We had our consultant investigate the area, the construction type with the wood stairs and backfill. Construction-wise is feasible. One of the big concerns, obviously, is not having property rights. And so those property rights include both the South Coast Water District access road and the OC Parks property. So what we looked at with the access road, we had some initial discussions with South Coast Water District staff. They were very helpful and worked with us. But one thing we did note in the document, in the easement document language, is that it was an easement specifically for access to the site. And it did not allow the easement to be transferred or assigned. Therefore, we concluded at a minimum, we would need to work with the property owner and secure some type of legal right for the city to operate a public trail. So that would be one hurdle as part of this process. We did not reach out to that underlying property owner. So we left that, again, just looking at feasibility, we left that for a later phase if we were to proceed. We did have a meeting with OC Park staff. We had a pretty lengthy discussion with them. The immediate concerns, the area is a high value habitat area. So we did walk through the fact that there is a beaten path there today. However, the OC Park staff reminded us that as they would view it in the NCCP area, that would be considered a taking of habitat, and that would be required to be mitigated. And they laid out a few of the other items that we would need to address to move the project forward. So with all that taken in together, the conclusion is that this would be a multi-year project, quite a bit of work just for that preliminary right-of-way and entitlement phase, anticipating most likely we would have a pretty detailed environmental document to do this work. And so for that reason, we felt the work to get to the construction far outweighed the construction itself. And so taking together with other priorities, staff made the recommendation to not proceed at this time.
Right. No, I understand that, but and maybe I know we have to have public comment, but we've got, in particular, I wanted Councilmember Jones to weigh in on some of this because my view of this is OC Parks ought to be a lot more cooperative and helpful than apparently they're being on this. I mean, this is they should be building this trail, I think, but maybe after we hear public comment, maybe we can engage in some discussion of that.
I absolutely have strong opinions on this project. I was able to walk this potential trail alignment actually with Anne several years ago when I was executive director of Laguna Canyon Foundation, and definitely have some thoughts. So I can chime in after public comment.
Any other questions of staff? So let's take public comment on this item.
I will just thank you guys for your work in getting us to this point. I know it's not always easy, so thank you.
Do any members of the public want to provide comment on this? John?
Hi, I'm speaking on, John Thompson, I'm speaking on behalf of South Laguna Civic Association, which for many years has advocated trying to do something with the trail. Frankly, we do not agree with the idea of just dropping everything. You should accept the report, that's fine, but you should not stop all efforts. Yes, it's difficult, but there's, among other things, substantial safety. If you read the report, one of the 3 suggestions was you either cling to the fence or you slide down the hill on your butt. So people are going to continue to try to do this. I think it would be irresponsible to just say, well, fine, it's too tough. We're not going to work on it. So we simply suggest that you leave the door open, that you continue to, you don't have to spend a lot of money, you don't have to spend a lot of time, but you don't just stop working on this thing. Perhaps some kind of a public workshop where you bring some of the parties together. Maybe there is another solution nobody's thought of so far. So we're just asking that you don't simply drop it, that we continue to try to figure out a way to do something. Thanks.
Council, Ann Christoph, I was the consultant on this project. I just want you to know that I'm available for any questions you might have. And I had a series of recommendations in our report that would outline some next steps. So as consultant, I would hope that our work would not be in vain and that you would proceed. Thank you.
And can you just quickly highlight what some of the next steps would be in your view?
Well, the first was to have the city attorney examine all the legal easement documents and see where her opinion is about the status of our rights. The city does have a parcel that they own that has part of the trail on it already. And the public has been using that city-owned parcel for a trail. And that is the part of this access that directly adjoins the South Coast Water District Service Road. So public has been using that for now 30 years. And it seemed to me that that must give some credence to the right to continue to use that. And so there's a lot of issues that it would be good to examine further. Also, there is a possibility of a coastal conservancy grant for this, and perhaps cooperation with the county. The meeting that we had with the county was with staff, and we never did get to the next level of county bureaucracy. So I think that might be something that the council might pursue with supervisor. But I think together we can all develop a way to proceed.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Kathy Yerka. Thank you for pulling this item, Bob. I just wanted to echo what John Thomas said about safety. And I speak as one of those idiots who clings to the fence and who has gone down that very steep path, except I don't go on my butt because that's beneath my dignity. I actually stumble and kind of trip down it. And I think I have finally decided that I'm too old for that, but it's closed now. And who knows how I will feel when I take that beautiful flat part and get there and think, you know, I can just go down here. If there's any feasible way, I mean, I think John's advice was really good, is accept the report, but don't shut it down, because I think it would be really valuable and is just a nice asset in South Laguna. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this? We'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Jones, you want to provide your strong opinion that you expressed before? I'm looking forward to it. I've been waiting to hear it.
I always have strong opinions and a lot to say. So I agree with Orange County Parks assessment. This would count as a take. The environmental impacts, at least the last time I was up there, would be relatively minimal, but we would absolutely need to register a take with NCC. It is part of the NCCP HCP. And I think, I know that this is not on the agenda for discussion tonight, but this is an example of a reason that it would be wise for the city to consider joining the NCCP, because these kinds of projects would be incorporated into that process. We wouldn't have to be handling these as one-offs. I would say that I don't think this project should die tonight. I think it's important to look at the work that has already been put into the idea of this trail. I think we can absolutely elevate it with the county. I think we should also consider elevating it with NCC as part of our discussions with them. I serve as an Orange County Parks Commissioner for Katrina Foley, and I'm also on the board of NCC. So I understand how those processes would work. I don't necessarily think it's something we need to do right now. I think it needs to be part of a more strategic and holistic discussion around access points into Orange County Parks land. The number of access points into Orange County Parks wilderness preserves are limited for a reason, and that's to protect the wildlife and the habitat. So I think we need to be thoughtful about what access points we as a community really want to advocate for, which are our top priority, and try to come to parks with a bigger picture plan.
I just have a question. Dave, what is your opinion about this? I mean, I see the staff report.
First, I really appreciate Ann Christoph's comments, and I was not able to return Ann's call today because they got out of control for my schedule. But I was thinking too, if there was a way to figure out if someone else could step in. This seems like a very grant-worthy project. So I know we kind of don't discontinue anything here, which is part of what Public Works, I think, is concerned about, is we just keep loading up the plate and don't end up, because there's so much on the plate, we don't make a lot of progress on the things that you do want to make progress on, including this. So I think if there was help from the outside to maybe coordinate some of these issues and make the pathway, the figurative pathway, a little bit easier, including maybe a grant opportunity, I'd be happy to help out with that. But yeah, I don't know that we can add this to what we're about to be asking you to have as our work plan, at least right now.
Well, we could add it, but then we would take something else away, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that the fact that it's been studied and designed that hurts us. We're not going to bury this and never bring it back. Again, I think if someone from the outside, either Ann's group or John's group or OC Parks changes their mind, I think it's a great opportunity to talk about it again.
Yeah, so I mean, I've probably hiked on this specific trail more than, I don't know, my whole life, probably more than 300 times. And until probably 7 years ago, I was going on this trail with my grandma, which is kind of crazy to think about. I see this, I think Bob's absolutely right that if we wanted to do this, I think there would be a path to do it. The question that I have would be, well, I think I agree. One, it should be OC Parks and they should be dealing with projects like this. But if I think the appropriate place for something like this to be considered would be as part of our strategic planning meeting to see if there's 3 votes for this to be a high level priority. I don't know that this would be a priority for me compared to the other projects, but that's not to say that at some point in the future we shouldn't look at it. If a group of residents wants to work on figuring out how we can leverage, that grant funding that's available, that seems like a great idea. But I see that there are safety concerns definitely with this specific trail, which I would be more sensitive to if there weren't another way to access the, because you can take the Valito Trail and you can essentially get to the same place where this is. So if that weren't the case, I'd be more inclined to say, let's prioritize this, put it at the top of the list. But when there's another trail, it's harder to make that that justification. So my perspective would be, I think, sure, in the future, at some point, it would be great if OC Parks or the collaborative that Hallie, you mentioned, if they took the lead on something like this. But when we look at all the priorities, this is not something where I'd be willing to take away some of the other critical projects that we have as a city. And I don't want to have staff spinning on this especially if it's not part of our CIP. So I'd be supportive if there's support for that. If somebody wants to take that to the strategic planning meeting and see if we have support for putting it in our CIP, but otherwise I don't want to keep staff spinning on something if we're not going to be able to actually implement it and get the job done.
I don't think we need, I agree. I don't think we want staff, I don't think with Tom and Union spending more time on this right now, because there should be a conversation with the county. I don't know whether it's you, it's Hallie, both of you, whatever. See what the county's willing to do. In terms of the easement, I mean, somebody can contact the property owner and just say, would you grant an easement on the road for public access for a trail? That's an easy one. That's no cost. And then, if there are, I don't know whether, I see Ed Almanza in the back. I don't know whether Ed or somebody else wants to contact Coastal Conservancy and see about grant alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, and maybe we're all saying the same thing. I just think we ought to push on this a little bit without involving staff, without more staff time and commitment. And, let's talk to OC Parks. Hallie, there you go.
I'd be happy to.
Maybe Ed would reach out to Coastal Conservancy and, let's see about it.
Yeah.
And then see where we go.
So I originally brought this forward when I first got on council, when we decided to do the water tanks. And so I'm on the Coastal Greenbelt Authority. So I don't want this to be a formal subcommittee, but what if Hallie and I just have a conversation? I did bring up at my last board meeting, not this particular project, but I just kind of put out there with all of the land managers that were present that day to see if we were willing to work together on some of these issues. It was specifically regarding the cameras, the fire detection cameras, because I know that we tend to get in our way a little bit when we, and it bogs down some of these things. I think that could be a big benefit. So I guess what I'm just recommending is Hallie and myself can have a couple conversations with some of the folks that we both run into, but me on Coastal Greenbelt Authority and then your organization. What's the gentleman from NCC again? What's his?
Jim Salentich.
Yeah, Jim, because he shows up to the meetings as well. So, yes. So how about we just discuss it? And then I did talk to Dave about, there are grant opportunities. So, yeah, and I think we all agree, we don't think staff should be working on it, but we can just kind of see what opportunities exist outside of the city.
Yeah, and then if there's a point where you think that there is a need for staff to get involved and it's something that should be a city council priority, you guys could bring that back and that could be incorporated into our other priorities.
Right.
So I would, with that, I'd move the recommended actions.
Can I make one more
Go ahead,
comment?
yeah.
This would require mitigation. We'd have to do habitat mitigation. And I would recommend that we consider, if we're doing any mitigation as part of fuel mod work, we could easily lump a few extra square feet into that and address the issue that way. So it's just something for us all to be aware of.
Well, hopefully that to our next item, we won't have to do that kind of mitigation on fuel modification, but that sounds good. So I would move the recommended action.
Well, the recommended action, but then, the recommended action is for staff to discontinue activities.
Councilmember Whalen, there's a typo in there, which is kind of a funny typo. It says direct staff not to discontinue, which is kind of what you would like to do. So
Yeah, but I think it's supposed to say not to continue. I think is not right. I guess I think it got corrected. I think it got corrected.
We wouldn't totally discontinue it, but we would wait for other folks to give us some additional information.
Well, I would just, and maybe we could just formalize Mark's suggestion that Mayor Pro Tem Orgill and Councilmember Jones, pursue discussions on this with the county and other outside organizations and then report back if there's,
Well, you think we need an action for that, or can they just do that?
well, I just want them to do that.
Yeah.
But
It's not a formal subject.
I don't think we need to, I just don't want to make this more, I think I would move the recommended actions with the adjustment of taking out the word, make it direct staff to discontinue efforts instead of direct staff not to.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Next up is item 16.
Yeah, so I pulled this, and I think Bob will probably have some comments as well. This is our item to reestablish the wildfire mitigation fire safety subcommittee that Bob and I were on and did considerable amount of work. And in the staff report attached is the list of tasks and actions that have been either completed or in progress. And I noticed, so since the fires, I've had a lot of conversation, and I'm sure the other council members as well, about concern about fire danger in our town. And the first thing I noticed is people are just not informed about what we have done. And some of the emails that we've been getting, for the most part, it kind of reflect the fact that people just are not kind of in tune with what we have been doing. So to that end, I think in other actions we may be taking, I think we need to do some more outreach to the public. It's clear whether we do more workshops and things like that. Bob and I are going to put some videos together that we can put out, short videos that people can watch. But what I've noticed is, in going through the neighborhood, while we have done, there's no end to what we can do to mitigate our fire danger in this town. There's a lot of actions that need to be taken. But what is clear to me too, and we do have a long laundry list of things we want to work on, and I have another list in my notebook here. But what is clear to me is we need to recognize that we're all kind of in this together. So it's not, city government can't do everything here to keep us safe. We're going to do every single thing we can, but people are going to have to create dispensable space around their homes. They're going to have to harden their homes. And we're probably going to take a very aggressive approach on this because this is a huge problem. And particularly for our community, there's a lot of parallels with Palos Verdes and our town. So we're going to be having a lot of discussions. Bob and I met last night with the police chief, the fire chief, city manager, to kind of go over what we're going to be, what's included in this agenda bill. But we are going to be doing a lot of work, and we're planning to be back in 90 days with our plan. But in the interim, we may be bringing some things to council for immediate action. And I'll pass the ball to Bob.
Yeah, and I think Dave, the city manager, has a brief presentation that he'll be able to give us an overview of where we've been and where we're going, which I think the community will find informative. But what I've been so impressed with in the last 2 weeks or so is the response from our community. I think the mayor and others, put the word out to get feedback, get suggestions, get ideas, and there's been an enormous response from a wide range of groups and people in the community. And we're taking all those down, we're looking at them, we're going to try to organize them and make sense out of them. But I think that in the discussions I think it was Chief King who phrased this last time, we are going to have to look at everything with fresh eyes and look at everything, with really a blank slate, and look at all kinds of alternatives and solutions here beyond what we did in 2019. And I think when you'll see here with the city manager's presentation, and it's not to clap ourselves on the back, but we have done a lot of good things. We spent over $20 million of your money to make this community safer than it was in 2018. And it is definitely safer. But is it safe enough? No, it's not safe enough. We know we have more to do. We know we have to keep going, and we will keep going. I think some of you have heard me say this before, and I'll just put it out there. There isn't going to be enough money to do everything we need to do. I and the council at the time pushed in 2018, to get a sales tax measure. Went to the ballot primarily for fire safety measures. Did not pass. I think we're going to have that conversation again as a community. Are we willing to spend a little bit more of our money to promote safety, preserve our homes, preserve our ability to get fire insurance? I mean, this is a, it's really not too much to say this is an emergency. I mean, we are in constant threat. And I think we can do more, and we need to do more. And as I say, what really makes me feel good these last 2 weeks is I can see the feedback from the community. The community wants us to do more, and together we'll do it. But as Councilmember Kemp said, it really is, a lot of it's going to fall on us as individual homeowners and individual, renters or whatever in the community to do things to our private property that maybe, aren't comfortable, that you say, well, I really don't want to remove the vegetation within 5 feet of my house. But these are the kinds of tough decisions we're going to have to make. But anyway, please keep your ideas coming. We will have an ongoing, iterative process here as we go through to try to prioritize things. And, we are setting up meetings with the neighborhoods. We've got one coming up Saturday. Reach out to us if you want us to meet with your neighborhood. We will do that. Councilmember Kemp and I will do that with staff, and see the kind of the more granular issues that the various neighborhoods are dealing with. It will be. It was in 2019. It was a heavy lift. It'll be a heavy lift again to do this, but I think collectively we're all up to the task because we see really what the end result can be of a fire. And I guess the last point I'd want to make is if there was ever any question in anybody's mind, and I sound like a broken record on this, we started this dialogue in 2015 about above ground utility lines. And the utilities have made efforts to make them safer. They put, covered conductor, and they're still causing major fires. They are still causing major fires. So no matter their good intentions, no matter their efforts. So when you look at our community and you look at the risks, and that's an expensive fix. I mean, there's no question about it. Getting the remainder of the community underground and getting some of these transmission lines in the canyon and other places underground, very expensive. But we're really going to have a hard look at it and decide, are we up to it, or are we willing to put some of our money into the mix to buy some peace of mind and to buy some additional safety. So I'm energized to work on this process. I know Councilmember Kemp is, and I know all the council members are just super focused on this, as well as our staff. So Dave, maybe you can run through a presentation for us.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Whalen. I think Jeremy's going to help me put this on the screen. You can move to the slide after this one when it's ready. Okay, so I just want to point out for the public's edification, the report that we're all talking about in terms of updating is available on our website. We can provide you a link, or you can just Google those terms and land at that report. It's really worth the read. As has been mentioned, a lot of work went into it. And attached to this agenda item itself, we've updated those tasks that you'll find in the report. So all those tasks are updated in terms of where it is today. Next slide, please. So, and that is the progress from the 2019 report, everything from setting up the outdoor warning system to improving and expanding our FMZs, our fuel mod, with more to come. You heard mention about some of the permitting issues we're running into, and we're hoping to be able to avoid those. Bluebird Canyon Road is wider. We have the helicopter filling stations. The building code standards in Laguna Beach are among, if not the highest in the state in terms of fire hardening. And including increased reservoir capacity from South Coast Water District. So each of those areas is talked about in the report. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the ad hoc committee's next steps will be to really focus in the next 90 days with public meetings, welcoming all the more input and more ideas than we've had, and we've gotten a lot of them, as Bob mentioned, as Sue mentioned. Involve other stakeholders. These could be neighboring cities around us, OC Parks and others who'd help us, again, fire harden the community. We'll take some time to review that past progress and then obviously learning from the fires recently in the Palisades and the Eaton fire. And as noted, starting with a clean slate. The rest of the scope is in the agenda report for folks to look at. A big factor of this is communicating, and I'll talk about that in just a second, and then prioritize what would be fast efforts. Next slide, please. So what are those fast efforts? We've talked about more parking limits, for instance, on Bluebird during red flag days, limits on construction activity during red flag days to try to keep roads open. That would include private construction as well as potentially public construction like Caltrans and our own work. Evacuation preparedness, testing the warning sirens, having evacuation drill days, sending mailers to folks as to every resident as to where you can find your evacuation routes. And that's on a slide coming up. Fuel mod, more. Talked about maybe doing a satellite study to review brush density, and we mentioned the legislation. Undergrounding, about 30% of the city is not undergrounded, so the concept of maybe working to help front some of the design costs for that. Some different ideas associated with making that into one district with multiple zones. And then legislation to exempt undergrounding design from CEQA and the Coastal Act, as well as removing the match requirement from SCE for the bigger projects. Sue mentioned communications, telling more people about how to become a FireWise community. These are neighborhoods that would be FireWise, and then some short educational videos. And then, as noted, more coordination with neighboring agencies. Next slide, please. So briefly, to learn more about it, this is all on our website. I didn't put links in the presentation, but you can find them by Googling it. You can find how all the fuel modification zones, and I think that's really instructive for people to know where they are and where they're ready and maintained by goats versus by hand, and then the ones that are in the planning stages and the permitting stages. Actually, again, it takes a long time. It can't take that long anymore. You can get a free wildfire fire consultation at home. You can call the fire department and someone will come out and walk through your own house with you in your yard. So that's on our website too. Next slide. Again, the evacuation zones are up there. You can download it to your phone. We had a QR code problem, but we don't anymore. You can just put your phone on the QR code and have your own evacuation zone map on your phone. Next slide, please. And then, of course, about learning how to be a FireWise community. This is a CAL FIRE sponsored program, readyforwildfire.org. Lots of good stuff on there. We'd love to encourage more and more of that. Next slide. So the recommended actions: reestablish the committee to update the 2019 plan, follow the scope in the agenda report, be authorized to work on the legislation that has been mentioned a couple times tonight, including by Assemblymember Dixon, and then return in 90 days with as much as we can possibly do, which is a lot, but the timing is important. So thank you.
Any questions for staff? Let's open it. Oh, go ahead. None. Are there any members of the public who'd like to weigh in on this item? Mr. Lawson, Chair Emeritus.
Well, thank you. And I think Sue is absolutely right. We've done a tremendous amount. We've made a lot of progress in the last decade or so, but we needed to do that because we had kind of neglected this area for many, many years prior to that. And I think it's wonderful that we have done all that we have done, but we need to do more. I spent the first 7 years of my time in California living in Pacific Palisades at the top of the first hill at Coast Highway and Sunset. It breaks my heart that that neighborhood no longer exists. In fact, some people are still missing there. It breaks my heart that that community no longer exists because it was very much like Laguna Beach. It was truly a community, and probably one of the very few communities like that anywhere in the city of Los Angeles. I will tell you, we have done a great deal here, but nothing that you're going to do tonight, nothing that the city has done in the last 100 years is going to much matter if we don't get the fire prevention piece right, and we all know that. One suggestion I have that might be helpful is to better integrate a group that I know Bob and Sue are very familiar with, which is the Emergency Disaster Preparedness Committee. tremendous amount of expertise there. You've got the retired former Assistant Chief of LA County Fire, the fourth largest local fire agency in the United States. You've got a board member of the Fire Safe Council, Dave Horn, who's been working on these issues for 30-plus years, ever since his own home burned down in Mystic Hills back in '93. You've got the chair of the committee, who's the Shelley Beneke, who is a brilliant young woman, who, in fact, is serving as treasurer of our local Fire Safe Council. You've got Sonny Myers, who is a stalwart, who has really been the tentpole of our CERT program for many years. You've got a new member, Dr. Jennifer Sorensen, who's absolutely brilliant. You've got the vice chair, Dr. William Dodge, who's equally brilliant. I mean, these are people with multiple degrees and have tremendous experience in this area. You know, and I could go on and on and on. Dr. Edward Musali, who's both a dentist and an attorney. I mean, you've just got a tremendous amount of expertise there, and they can help you vet some of these ideas. We kind of know what to do. Undergrounding is absolutely key. Bob is dead right on that. The Forest Service did a study in published, I believe, in 22, that found there was something like 32,000 wildfires in the prior 28 years that had been ignited by power lines, above grade power lines. We've had 4 of our major 5 fire incidents in the last dozen years ignited by local power lines, all SCE. This is a problem, and we need to address it. And then it's a matter of doing the things that are in CDI, Safer from Wildfire, and properly resourcing our fire department in line with the study that was conducted, the standards of cover, which was presented here last June. So thank you. You all know what to do. You've got the best city manager here in the recent history of Orange County to help you execute it. Just go do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Thomas, I fully support what you're doing. I'm looking at the list of 9 things. I'm going to suggest you give you some more work that figure out a way to address insurance. Obviously, we don't want to have to use your insurance, but I'm running into people whose insurance is being canceled. All the things you're doing here should help us be insurable. But I think to the extent that you can, I think you just ought to add that to the list. Some of you know, we lost a house in the Palisades fire. We lived there until we moved here. We kept the house. It was a rental. It was an area of the Palisades where I was never concerned we were going to burn. We were underground. We had a fireproof roof. Backyard was all concrete and pool. Never, my insurance rates weren't even that high. Wow. Never really was particularly concerned about it. Burned to the ground. The fire started in the northwest. We were in the southeast. The wind was from east to west. And yet we burned, along with just about everybody in the neighborhood. It's actually the neighborhood where our fire department, I think, was up in Huntington. So we're all vulnerable here, regardless of whether we think we're safe. And we all need to do everything that you're talking about in terms of hardening our homes. And, you know, it's less fuel, more water, a lot of things like that that we should do. So the similarities between the Palisades and Laguna are unsettling. They're striking 3 ways in, 3 ways out, open space, ocean. As you could see in the news, even with the evacuation, they needed an evacuation plan. You did one, which is great. But theirs didn't work. So anyway, totally support everything you're doing.
Thank you, John. So sorry for your loss. Devastating. Yeah, and the tenant.
Hi, yeah, Ann Christoph. I'm the one that sent you the picture of Shirakawa-go, Japan, that has the water cannons to protect the thatched roof houses that they have there. And it seems to me that level of protection is what we need. That is what could really work in case of a fire, because the water would be in the neighborhoods, wetting the houses, wetting the vegetation and everything. And
yes, it's another expensive item, but when you think about how much damage can happen and the cost of that damage, human, psychological, monetary, spending some, to me, I would feel much more confident about our ability to protect ourselves if we had a system like that compared to, well, take this plant out and do this little thing over here. It's very doubtful that those things are going to make much of a difference compared to a water cannon system. When you look at the pictures on TV, the houses are burnt and the bird of paradise plants are living and green. So it wasn't those plants' fault. It was the embers and the firestorm. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who would like to comment on this item? Then let's bring it back to council.
I just have a couple more comments. We had the insurance commissioner came in here at the end of August. We had the insurance commissioner and Chief King was here, and they talked about the state's plan from the state insurance commissioners, way to get insurers back in the marketplace. And we had a packed council. The chamber was packed here. People were not getting insurance. We all, where I live, everybody around me is on the FAIR plan. I still have my insurance, but I'm sure it's going to get canceled. The FAIR plan is underfunded now, and we're going to get a bailout. And then, Trump says he's not going to give any grant money or anything. So who knows? But we're not going to be able to do water cannons. We met with the water districts. Municipal water systems are built for delivering water to the homes and for some structure fires. If we start putting water cannons, we're not going to have enough water. People are going to turn those things on, and firefighters aren't going to be able to have enough water. Water availability is a problem, and we're going to work on that with the water districts. Alex and I were with the South Coast Water District, and John was there, last week, and we talked, for the first hour about dealing with fire in the water. How much water do we have? What size are the reservoirs? Our water, our helipods and all that. But it's still, even with that, they went through a lot of water really fast. So we have to be super thoughtful about that. But again, people are not going to get insurance if they don't clear around their houses because they're just not going to give it to you. And the way they're going to operate is, let's say Alex has a house, he's my neighbor, Hallie's my neighbor, Mark and Bob live behind me. If the 5 of us clear around our house, then we'll get insurance. They consider that a fire safe community, even though it's 5 houses. So this is the extent that they're going to be going to. So, you might be aware of that and start thinking about it. We're going to work on our plans, but we're going to be constantly communicating about things we're doing. But in the meantime, my advice is to get the clearance around your house because you're going to have to do it anyway.
Just one final thought on that. There's obviously a whole host of things that we'll be meeting regularly on. But the Firewise community, which does help with respect to insurance eligibility. Emerald Bay is a Firewise community. David Horn, who's on our EDPC, lives over there, and he's worked on that for a long time. So it can be done. And if you're a Firewise community, it's not gonna guarantee insurance, but it certainly is a factor, and it's gonna help. So to John Thomas's point, we will add insurance as a focus here on this as well. But anyway, we are anxious to get going on this and hopefully report back on a regular basis to council and the community.
Do you want to go, Hallie?
I just want to say, in looking at these recommendations, the 2025 update, number 6, the vegetation management in public spaces. I obviously have a lot of experience and, again, a lot to say about those items. So I think that I will probably put together a list of my recommendations and send them to Dave, who can then pass them along to the committee. There's a way to do fuel management in an environmentally sustainable way that supports our coastal sage scrub habitat, and we need to be looking at that.
It's good we have you on the council. Mark, do you want to add anything? So I just want to say first, thank you to Bob and Sue and staff for putting this together. I think it's really impressive. What I think the outpouring of ideas. One of the things that's remarkable about Laguna Beach is we probably on a per square per mile basis. We have some of the smartest people in the country, if not the world. And so it's really great to see all these ideas coming through. And as Sue said, I don't think that you can over communicate on this issue. It's really not about the city, it's about the community, because we're all in this together, as she eloquently said. At the end of the day, what we really want, and I'm hoping that I think that's what this plan will provide, is because there's a lot of ideas that we could do that would, either improve our ability to prevent wildfires or to be more resilient. The question is, what's the highest and best use, right? Because we only have a certain amount of funds, and so I'm hoping that's what this recommendation will be. And having all these ideas from the community allows you to kind of explore every idea, and through that lens, I just want to raise a couple ideas that maybe could potentially fall into that, but it's something that you guys could look into. So one is, the city manager brought up that we have that inspection program. I'm wondering, what if we sent a mailer to every resident and we offered that on an annual basis, perhaps when people are doing their parking permits or something like that, just so we can get more people to be aware of that program and take advantage of it. Then streamlining, I think, is going to be key to everything, especially the undergrounding assessment districts. City manager and I have talked about the idea of front loading the funding for the design of it. In the next 10 years, the design is not necessarily going to change for how we underground different districts. So it may make sense to get that process going now, and then when the community wants to do it, they could vote later. And then finally, something that Councilmember Orgill and I were working on when we were updating the fire department strategic plan is AI wildfire cameras. I really feel like that is, and this is just my opinion, I'm not an expert, so you guys should go and do this analysis on your own as well. But I think AI wildfire cameras, we should cover our whole open space with them, because that's really going to be, you have to get to a fire within 5 minutes to really have a chance of putting it out. And I know when we had these crazy winds, I was so nervous that there was going to be a fire that would start. And so I know we had people watching and stuff, but I think technology is a key solution. And one of the challenges that Mark and I were dealing with was that you have so many different government agencies involved in the open space. You have multiple municipalities, you have cities, you have water districts, and it's time for all those bureaucratic barriers to go away. And so if there's some sort of a solution where we could lead a regional compact where we get all these agencies basically buy in and say, look, wherever we need these cameras, we're going to all cooperate with each other, not let bureaucracy get in the way of getting those cameras where they need to go. I think that's something that could be considered, because we shouldn't have a barrier of other agencies not cooperating. So those are my high level ideas. I'm very much looking forward to hearing the action plan in 90 days, and hopefully we're going to be able to position this where we can get a lot of these items in our upcoming fiscal year 25-26 budget. So again, thank you for the work, Bob and Sue, and everyone and all the members of the community who have been actively participating on this. So do we have, is there a motion?
I just move the recommended action.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Should we take a break? We'll do a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 6:40-ish. Or actually, we can start the staff report without her. Yeah, okay. We're now going to be moving on to the first item of our regular business calendar, item 18. Dave, is Liz and Mark, they're providing a staff report?
Yeah, we're going to provide staff report with Public Works. It's like Liz will tee it up.
I will. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Runagi and council members. I'm Liz Avila, Senior Public Works Analyst and Solid Waste Program Coordinator. I'd like to introduce our team that's here tonight. To my left is Ashley Moran, our Public Works Administrative Assistant, Administrative Analyst, who has been instrumental in helping me with the implementation of this franchise agreement. To my right, of course, is Mark McAvoy, Public Works Director, and behind me, we have the CR&R management team, Julie Beretta, our Senior Regional Vice President. She's with Hashim Shakir, our Senior Vice President of Sustainability and Regulatory Compliance. Also with us is our two sustainability recycling coordinators, Nick Brekovich and Alexandra Benson. To present the report, I'd like to start with a summary of our activities that we have done to implement the franchise agreement regarding solid waste services. On July 11th, 2023, the City Council awarded the franchise agreement to CR&R. The 8-year agreement began on July 1st, 2024, and includes 2-year extensions based on performance standards. Transition efforts began immediately on July 12, 2023, and included meeting with the CR&R team and having biweekly meetings. We planned the delivery of the new containers, and throughout that process, we were identifying service discrepancies. During this process, we also initiated outreach efforts that began in March of 2024. We started mailing letters to our residents. The first one in March, we've immediately submitted to them our rate sheets so they can see the rates, and it included a template of the invoices that they would be receiving later in the year. Ashley developed a transition page that is on our city website, and at one point it was the second most viewed website on the city website. It's great. We posted all of our correspondence that we sent to our residents and all the social media posts, any information that we released, we would put on this transition page. We also launched an aggressive social media outreach and we posted Q&As in our community newsletter throughout this process. We also included the franchise agreement and we posted the RFP proposals so that, if any resident contacted us and they didn't have this information, we would direct them to the transition page and they had all this information available to them. And lastly, we also provided to you quarterly updates to keep you informed on our implementation efforts. As I indicated, throughout this process, significant issues were identified related to inaccurate customer service data, primarily impacting multifamily dwellings with 2 to 8 units. And this was primarily due to the nature of the billing process that we had the prior year and the merging of the data. So to address these discrepancies and offer equitable services, CR&R met with city staff and we discussed a proposal to modify the definitions for multifamily dwellings that are currently included in the franchise agreement. With this option, multifamily property owners will be able to take advantage of cost-saving options and reduce the number of required carts, which is one of the most problematic issues that we were dealing with. So what I want to do now is just kind of explain what the current definitions are in the franchise agreement. So single-family properties receive individual cart collection, and that requires that each household have 3 set of carts: recycling and organics and a trash cart. Multifamily properties can opt to be part of this process but they have to offer a set of cards per unit. So that's also problematic because a lot of multifamily properties don't have the space. With this process, the single-family properties, we now bill them directly instead of the property taxes like we did last year. And again, they're subject to the residential rates. We created a flow chart to highlight the current process. But what I really just wanted to highlight here is that currently, if either a residential property or a multifamily property, if they have individual collection service, as I indicated, they need to provide one set of card per unit. The rates are for a 35-gallon cart, they pay $26.74 a month per unit, or a 65-gallon is $27.05, or a 95-gallon is $27.25 per unit. In addition, there are other services that single-family residences get. They get 4 bulky item pickups per year, 4 household hazardous waste pickups per year, 1 per quarter, 2 textile recycling pickups. They get mailed back Sharps containers upon request. We also have them at City Hall, and we provide them if they come in to request one, and holiday greenery collection. Now, the proposed changes are to the multifamily definitions included in the franchise agreement. And the changes are as follows. Multifamily properties with 2 to 8 units that receive individual or centralized card collection would be subject to residential service rates per unit. Multifamily properties that have multiple days collection per week or bin service or have more than 9 units will continue to be subject to the multifamily rates. And that varies depending on the combination that they select. So to highlight the key changes, multifamily property owners can now opt for either individual card collection or select the centralized card collection. The difference is that now they don't have to provide all of these sets of cards to each of their tenants. And they will be providing this shared service, the centralized card collection, under the single family rate, the residential family rate. Another key change is if this is approved, CR&R will need to just bill one person, the property owner or the manager, and they will no longer be able to provide bills or bill invoices to each of the tenants. So that's a major service to highlight. So this other flow chart that we included highlights those changes. And as you can see, if you look to the right under family properties, it shows 2 to 8 units. You go further down and you can see that if they have individual collection service or centralized collection service, they still have the same rates as residential residents and receive the same additional services that come with those packages. To highlight this further, we included a table that we'll bring up, and here you could see what the rates would be. So, for example, if you look at the parcel, the rows, the columns in blue, we have units, parcels, and then the different sizes for the cards. If you look down in the parcel for 2 units, for example, this column under parcels tells you how many duplexes we have in the city. So in total, we have about 966 multifamily dwellings that will be impacted with this proposal. And we anticipate that approximately 936 properties, and those are those with units 2 to 6, may see a rate decrease if they are currently paying the multifamily rate. So to highlight this, if you look on the gray part of the chart, the two columns to the right, and if you go down to units 7 and 8, you will see that a typical rate for a multifamily property owner, if they just requested one set of cards for their multifamily property, a 95-gallon cart, they're probably paying $185.66 per month. However, if they move to the single-family rate, they will see a cost savings. So for example, again, a duplex with the change, instead of being on the multifamily rates, they will now be paying, for example, for a 95-gallon cart, $54.50. So this chart kind of gives you the different scenarios, and you could see where most of the cost savings will occur. And those are for those units between 2 and 4. And that includes over 800 properties. So we can move to the next slide. And just want to highlight 2 policies that will go into effect if the proposal is approved tonight. And some of these 2 policies are included in the franchise agreement. So any rate adjustments will be effective February 1st, 2025. And they will be reflected in the quarter invoicing period for February through April. Rate adjustments will apply to services rendered 90 days prior from the effective date of the third amendment, this contract amendment, retroactive to services rendered between November 1st, 2024 and January 31st, 2025. The council report also included 2 cleanup items that we included in the contract amendment. And those are, so the first one is corrections to references in the franchise agreement regarding 2 cart contamination audits that are required annually. We noticed that when this specific audit was referenced in other sections of the agreement, it was inconsistent and it referenced 4. But one of the attachments in the franchise agreement that outlines the process for all this indicates 2 cart contamination audits per year. And the other is an extension that was granted as part of the scope of work to complete an ongoing audit of the level of services provided and reported and billings for extra carts to June 30th of 2025. And this additional time is needed to rectify all the incorrect data that we're working through and to assist customers adjust their accounts. So with that, the recommendation tonight is it is recommended that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute the Third Amendment with CR&R to the agreement for the collection, transportation, processing, and diversion of recyclable materials, food scraps, yard trimmings, construction, transportation, and disposal of municipal solid waste, to memorialize changes in the definitions related to multifamily dwellings and cleanup items effective February 1st, 2025. And that concludes my presentation, and we are open for questions.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for all the heavy lifting throughout this process. So I've been trying to wrap my head around this, and I think the key question that I want to understand is, how did it work before this RFP? Was it, so let me just raise a hypothetical. So let's say you have a fourplex with 4 studios, let's call it a 2,000 square foot, fourplex, and then you have a single family home next to it that's 3,000 square feet. You have, for each of those 4 units are studios, 1 person living there, maybe you have a family of 5 or 6 in that single family home. Hypothetically, you could have more trash more trash produced by that single family home. And I think that could in fact be likely, right? As just a hypothetical. But under the way that the RFP worked, you would essentially you couldn't just say, I have a fourplex, but my use is not that much. I'm just going to have 1 set of trash cans and deal with it that way. You have to pay basically 4 times the amount. So I guess the question is, before the RFP, was it such that you could just ask for the number of trash cans based off your uses, or was it always Was it tied to use, or because it seems like now it's tied to unit as opposed to use?
It has always been tied to units.
Okay.
So prior to this new franchise agreement, and for the past 30 years, multifamily properties with 2 to 5 units have been billed by the city on the property tax roll, and the rates were designated by units.
A unit. Okay.
So they have always been by units.
Got it.
The rate structure was a little bit, it's an older rate structure, but the current structure also is by
unit.
units.
And I get why it's by unit, because from CR&R's perspective, when they applied for the RFP, they have to figure out their rates and everything. It just, there is a little bit of inequity here, I think, for people who are not using as much trash and could easily get away with sharing a trash container with, other people in their complex. Of course,
Right. We do offer 3 different sizes. And I think with new legislative mandates, it's really important that everybody has carts that are theirs, so that we
them
can
accountable.
monitor recycling contamination, organics compliance. The city is mandated by the state to enforce all of these mandates and to monitor, and we have to report all our findings to CalRecycle, and they also come down and visit us once a year.
Got it. Thank you.
So one of the, I thank you, Liz, for putting all this together, and I'm not sure I understand a lot of it, but one thing I do see in the, the emails we get and the phone calls we get is, I used to only have 3 cans, now I get 12 cans. I don't have a place to put these cans. Why do I have 12 cans? Right? And I could understand the frustration with that, right? Because you get small alleys, there isn't room for all this stuff. So as I read through this, it didn't seem to me this was going to result in fewer cans to anybody. I don't understand. Or if it is, maybe can you explain that to me?
Yes, I can. So this is why we're here tonight, because those were the calls that we were getting all the time. Not only CR&R, but myself and Ashley. So CR&R came to us and say, hey, we have an idea. We have a proposal. Can we sit down and talk? So they proposed looking at the definitions. It was the best option to go through. And if we modified the definitions for multifamily properties, as we are proposing tonight, and those between just 2 and 8, because they have similar service needs as a single-family home, they will be able to decide, I want individual card collection, I want to give my tenants a set each, or I want centralized card collection. I don't want all those cards on my property. I just want to have 3 large ones that they can all share. So that's centralized card collection at the single family rate, at the residential rate. Whereas currently, if they wanted to say, I don't want the cards, I just want shared service, I only need 3 because I can't fit anymore, they have to move to the multifamily rate structure and pay the $195.66, especially if it's a 7 to 8 unit complex. They would need to get the large trash can, and the minimum cost is $195.66. So we do offer the recycling card and the organics card at 50% of the rate of the trash can to encourage more recycling and organics. But that's the main difference. So with these modifications, all the multifamily properties between 2 to 8 units will be able to just call CR&R and say, come pick up my cards. I want you to charge me the residential rate. And they can offer a shared service to their tenants. They no longer need to have all this. So that's one of the biggest advantages of this. And in addition to that, as we saw in that chart, and you can bring it back up, a lot of them might see some, the chart with the rates.
So Liz, what you're describing as centralized collection.
Yes.
Is really, I don't need 24 carts for my 8 units. I only need
3.
So that's centralized because you don't get like a big bin,
share
but you
services.
share the smaller bin.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's what Bob was getting at. So it does allow that
It does.
flexibility now, and people have complained about this, you still have to pay for the 8 units. You
Yes,
can't
it's the
just say,
residential.
I'm only using 1 cart, so I'm only going to pay for 1 unit.
No, it's per unit as has always been. So if it's 27.25 and it's tied to the size of the trash can only. So they will need to pay 27.25 times 8 if it's an 8 unit, or times 2. And the column there tells you the price. So for a duplex, they'll just be paying $54.50. But they can select any size they want, provide 1 trash can, 2, any combination that meets their needs, as long as they don't exceed the number of sets that they're entitled to per the number of units.
And maybe this is a question for Julie, but I'll open public, are there any other questions? Because I just don't understand this whole use versus.
Never knew trash
So
was
the
so complicated.
trash. But you said they're 50% less.
Yes, the organic, for the multifamily and the commercial, the rates for organics and recycling are at half the cost of the trash rates.
Let me just ask a question. I don't know if you saw, we got one correspondence in today from Lewis Weil, right? And let's see, maybe this is a real world. He's got a duplex, and he just gives us the billing history, from 21, 22. So now he's saying in 24, 25, my billing for a duplex bill is $649.20, up 27% from last year and up 58% over 3 years, some of which predated, obviously, CR&R. Here he is. So with a duplex, what would you be paying? What would you be paying for a duplex?
$54.50 if it's the largest cart at 95 gallons.
Wait,
Unless he's paying for the multifamily rates.
Which is less desirable if you just have.
That's actually what
his
you got. So
choice. And that's what I think
54.50
he's-
times 12 is 654. So he's
Yeah.
right. He's right. The number's correct. Okay.
So
We need to point out too, that when people compare to the last year of the waste management contract, remember that the council purposefully subsidized it that last year and therefore artificially reduced the rates. So not only has that subsidy gone away, but the rates have gradually increased. And I think the waste management proposal was going to propose increases in rates too.
Oh, yeah, even higher, but.
I do have a
Single
chart.
family, and maybe this is what we didn't focus on. I know at the time that both proposals that we got, the commercial rates were going up significantly, a lot, right? And we knew that. Maybe we just didn't focus enough on the multifamily, but is the multifamily rate up more than the single family rate? If we look back historically?
yes, it has always been. Now, we also had a rate structure in the past that is no longer the industry standard for multifamily properties. And I can explain that one too. So multifamily properties had a base rate. So if you had 6 units, you paid $63. And then it was an additional $10 for each unit. That rate structure does not exist anymore. It's not an industry standard. It's by unit.
See, that sounds a lot more logical to me, because then that way you're actually basing it off of use. It's like for water, when you get water, you have a capacity charge for each unit, right? But then you have, ultimately it's based on use. Same with electricity. That just seems like that. So I guess, but it sounds like that's not so I guess that's not the industry standard anymore.
If I could speak to that, because I do come from a water utility background. In those utilities, you have 2 charges. You have your base charge plus the use charge.
Yeah.
And so for our trash, we don't have a base charge plus a use charge. We don't divvy it up that way. And so that's one difference, is there's just one rate. Whereas if at your house, when you pay your water bill,
Yeah.
there will be, oh, here's the meter fee of $30 a month plus X amount of dollars per gallon that I use of water. And so that's where the more use, less use gets captured.
Yeah, but it sounds like the old approach was able to reflect for some degree of when you have more units, but ultimately you're not having to pay for more that you don't use. Where this approach is basically does.
Well, it's
Yeah, because if you ended up having an 8-plex and you only needed 4 sets of cans,
Yeah.
you're paying the rate that like you had 8 cans. But, when we talked about this at a staff level, I understand the thinking behind that because while you may be really efficient with your trash, you could also jam an awful lot into that can and really kind of not be appropriately, you'd be gaming the system basically. Or use the neighbor's cans when yours is full.
But then we're just making assumptions about people who are renters there's going to be a lot less trash in these trash cans and making them pay more on an assumption about their use, right? Where code enforcement, that's the issue of what you're describing. I get where you're coming from.
I understand.
I just
Yeah.
don't think it makes sense. But
Okay.
but anyway, that's
So could I ask this? So with this proposal, with this amendment, and we're now talking to our multifamily users, how much money are they saving? What is this solution?
they would see potentially a significant savings if they are currently paying the multifamily rate, which would be anywhere between $178.81 or $195.66 in that chart. Because that's kind of like an example of the basic package that they would get as a multifamily, on the multifamily property rate structure. If they move to the residential rate structure, and let's say, for example, they're a duplex, their rate would go down to $54.50. Or a fourplex, the rate would go down to $109.
So under the contract as it's now being administered, are they all duplexes on up to 8plexes, for example? Are they all paying the multifamily rate?
Multifamily properties with 9 or more units will stay in the multifamily.
No, right.
Bob's asking, what is it now? If you're 2 and above, what are you paying?
It depends on what they selected. That's why I can't answer. I couldn't tell you tonight, like how many have. It depends on
what's the minimum?
property owner selected.
Let's
Whether
just
they
assume,
wanted,
for the sake of conversation, that we're going to talk about the 95 gallon.
Okay.
I think it'll be easier that way. Does that make sense, Bob?
Yeah.
so it depends on the individual multifamily property owner and what they currently have. If they selected to offer to the residents the residential rate, they have all these cards, but they're paying the $54.50, for example, for a duplex. But if they wanted to offer the shared services, they're on the multifamily rate structure right now, and they're paying the $195.66. So it depends. We don't have, I couldn't tell you tonight how many we have on each category.
So in other words, right now, if I'm a multifamily, if I own a fourplex, I can opt into the residential service rates
Yes,
currently?
with the modifications to the definitions.
No, I'm
No,
talking
right
about
now,
right now,
today.
before we modify any definitions. I'm a multifamily. I've got, what am I paying?
If you're a multifamily right now as a duplex, for example, you might be paying the $195.66 if you only have 3 cards. If you wanted to switch to the residential rates, you could do that and pay the $54.50, but you have to offer 6 cards, and each tenant will need to have a set of cards.
So this is basically taking away that incentive to need to have, because right now you're incentivized to have more cards than you need, essentially.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so we're getting rid of that incentive.
It provides more flexibility.
Yeah, got it.
Too.
Okay. Any other questions, or we'll open it up for public comment? Okay, do any members of the public want to speak? You want to come up to the right up here?
My name is Lida Martin. I have a unique problem perhaps because, yes, I do have 8 units, but this property has always had sleeping units. They don't call, I mean, we cannot even legally have kitchen. So we don't, 3 of my unit, they don't have even kitchen. They can cook. Now, when we were with Waste Management, we had for the whole complex, we were paying, and my contract was written May 24th, that the rest of the time is going to be that much. So it was a new contract that they made with me, Waste Management, before they changed. It was $63.35. That's what I was paying every month till June. All of a sudden in July, my bill was $799 some, almost $800. First, when I looked at it, I thought it's a mistake. It can't be. How am I going to explain this to the tenant? It just cannot be. And so I contacted them. They wouldn't return call. So anyway, since then, it is about 7 months I am fighting. I don't get any responses. I came to one of these meetings. They said, talk to the mayor. The mayor at that time, Sue, told me to the vice president of the company was here. So she promised she'll take care of my problem. I said, I can't go from 63 overnight without a letter, without anything. I cannot raise rents like that. So she promised she'll help me. She gave me her card. I never to this day heard from her. I wrote emails, I called, I did everything. Then I went to Liz Avila many times. She explained the same thing she has tonight, but it doesn't help me because the option, they reduced finally my pickup from twice a week to once a week. Plus I had 4 trash cans. Now I only have 1 trash can and 1 recycle and 1 organic. My organic nobody uses, but they charge me $50. They say it's law, so you have to put it. I said, fine, if it's a law, leave it there. But if you're not picking it up, then you shouldn't charge me because no, they don't pick it because it's brand new. I have pictures of it, which I send it to the council. They are not using, but I'm paying $50. Also, I only have a 95-gallon one, and it's enough for my 8 units. But they are charging me still about $200, $195. She said that's the minimum for one, and once a week pickup. I'm sorry, I think it's beeping. I should have stopped, right? Is that what?
Yeah.
Because I got scared. I don't know what to do.
Oh, yeah, no, you're good. Thank you. Thank
I'm
you for your
done.
comments. Yes, thank you. Thanks,
So,
Lita.
Liz, can I ask, so what would it be now for an 8-plex? What's the cheapest under the amendment that you could?
For an 8-plex, it'll go up to $218. However, each of the tenants will be entitled to all the services that residents get, which are the household hazardous waste, pickups, the bulky item pickups, the sharps by mail, all of the services that I highlighted earlier. So of the 966 dwellings, 30 will either, 7 will, between the 7 and 8s, they might stay the same or go a little bit up, which is about a $20 increase. But the benefits, they have more benefits. And the flexibility, what's important here is the flexibility to decide how many cards they have. So the 195.66 includes a trash, a recycling, and an organics. Multifamily property owners are required to offer those services to their tenants, and we, the city, is required to enforce that by doing audits annually and reporting to CalRecycle.
So she would be better off staying with the multifamily service charge, is what you're saying, at the 195?
Well, with the multifamily rate that she currently has, she has 3 cards. So if there's ever a time during the year where there's, an overflow, we will be monitoring contamination, we will be monitoring overflows. Moving over to the residential rates, there's more flexibility because the number of cards can be adjusted throughout the year, the sizes, and offer whatever combination really meets the needs of the tenants.
But Liz, to answer Mayor Pro Tem's question more specifically, a person with 8 units generally is better off on the multifamily.
If they want
Paid
to,
in the gray.
yes, 195, it's just going to cost a little more to go to the residential.
Yeah.
It'll go up to $218.
And Megan was pointing out, there's probably a typo in, along the 8 unit in the column that says 459.
Oh, that is a typo.
Okay, so that should
I
be
apologize for that.
roughly somewhere between 218 and 213.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes,
That
sorry
is
about
incorrect.
And additional clarification, when we say better off, it depends on whether they want more than 3 carts. Because if you want 6 carts, 7 carts
It would
to
go
meet
up.
your needs,
Yeah.
you'd be paying more. And so it would make more sense to probably switch over to the residential service rate side.
And as Liz was pointing out, if you go to the residential service side, you get the benefit of the residential perks, like the household hazardous waste, the bulk item pickup, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Those
if I stay on the commercial side, this 195, is that what it is?
195.66
Is per unit?
total. That's for the 3 sets. That's
Yeah, 3
the
sets.
basic that
So
they can probably, the
if you
combination.
had a 15-unit duplex, is that the rate you're paying or in
No,
the?
it fluctuates because it depends on the number of trash carts that they need for
Right.
15 units. So the rates will go up.
So it's 195. If I want 3 sets, it's 195 times 3.
Correct.
3 sets of trash cans.
And that's,
If they select the 95-gallon cart. 'cause
So
and
hypothetically,
that's because it's picked up more frequently.
no,
No.
just
It's-
once.
if you need 3 sets, it's because you have the need to have 3 sets to accommodate all
3
your.
sets, so 9 cans altogether.
Yes.
So
So it's 3 trash carts, 3 recycling, 3 organics.
just to put this into context, so if you have, let's say you opt for the $195 one, you'd get 195-gallon trash, 195-gallon recycle, 165-gallon organic. If you're a single-family homeowner who gets those same 3 options, you would pay essentially half of the cost as what someone who's using the same amount of trash but has multiple units.
Yes, we have over 8,000 single-family properties that are paying the 2725 or the 2705. Yes.
But they're getting the exact same service, and the single family person is getting the benefits of what Mark was just talking about, and the person who's paying double for the same size trash cans doesn't get those benefits.
The multifamily properties do get some of the benefits. They get the bulky item pickups. They get
But they don't get all the benefits.
they don't get all of them.
Okay.
They don't get the hazardous waste pickup and the sharps by mail.
Yeah, I just think it's fundamentally an unfair approach, but I get that's what the RFP was. So anyway, are there any members of the public who want to weigh in on this? No? Okay, we'll close public comment, bring this back to council. Anyone want to add anything?
Well, to your point, Alex, and I'm not sure there's much we can do, maybe
Yeah.
there is, but I mean, if you went to say every unit, every residential unit, right, is going to pay the same rate? Is that where you were headed, like a single family, just because I'm in a single family versus multifamily?
No, what I'm saying is that you should pay based on your use, not based on your unit, but we can't change that.
No, we can't. But I mean, it's like, if I'm a single family user of 95 gallons, I forget what the rate is, but, and I live in a condominium.
Yeah.
Right? And I get the same size, 395 gallons, I'm going to be paying a lot more. Right? Is that right?
I don't know what you.
If you,
I mean, that's what, I mean, that's, I think, what people are in part saying, right? Why, if I live in a single family home and I have 3 95-gallon cans, and I live in a condominium, let's say, or an 8-unit apartment building, and I have 3 95-gallon cans, am I paying more?
I think maybe to address that question, If we look at cities throughout Orange County, that's the way the rate systems are. You have your residential rates, you have your multifamily rates, and you have your commercial rates. And if you look at those rates, the single-family rates are usually lower. And we've had that here prior to this new franchise agreement as well.
To Bob's question, it would be the same because you could be eligible for the residential rates, but you could have 8 people that are essentially that are using the same, having the same, all of them are putting their trash into 3 cans that are the same size as single family, and they'd still have to pay twice as much. Yeah. Oh, that's what you're saying?
Let's go to the, as an example, the 95 gallon, the 2725. So is that per container?
It's per set. For residential, it's per
So it's
set.
the whole set?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So it's the $218 is for 8 sets?
8
if you
sets.
wanted them. So that seems pretty fair. And plus they get all of they don't have to take 8 sets.
Correct.
They could request 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, but they're still
But if
getting
you
service
wanted-
to 8 units.
But if you just wanted 1 set, you still have to pay
Yeah.
more of the cost. I just think it should be based on use, but anyway, I think
In a way, aren't they? Because if 8 people are using, they're still using trash.
but it should be based on the amount of trash that they're using.
Yeah, but how can you control that? What if I have an apartment, I fill my trash can up every single week to the gills? You know?
But then you go to code enforcement. I mean, it just,
No, I'm not saying I overflow it, but I think, you can't really tell them, just because someone lives in a unit doesn't mean they use less trash. I mean, maybe more than a family of 5, but I fill up my trash can every single week.
I mean, it does make sense to me because that unit is paying a fee.
Yeah.
but I think that when we're the government, our job should not be to basically charge people based on unit. We should be charging them based on usage. And so that you have capacity charges that can accommodate that, right? But anyway, I don't think that's for this discussion, but I think the old way made a lot of sense. But anyway, so I'm supportive of the recommended action before us because I think it addresses some of the issues, not all of them. Any other comments on this item? Okay, is there a motion?
Move the recommended action.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Liz, are you going to retire after this?
But will she run screaming out of the building? Maybe, yeah.
Okay. Okay, our final item is, we have appeal A, and so do we have staff here to provide a staff report? Martina?
Mayor, Councilmember Jones is going to recuse herself from this item because the representative of one of the parties made contribution to her campaign. So under the Levine Act, she is recusing herself.
Okay.
Sorry, bear with me. I'm having trouble with the Zoom link.
You got a lot to.
Everyone
we got
take
a
your
lot
time.
going on up here. Me and Hallie we're busy. Good night.
Have a good night, Holly.
I like how he's wondering if that.
I know. Okay, so we're gonna take appeal A. At this time, we are gonna start with a staff report. Martina.
Pull up.
Or while you're doing that, let me ask for any disclosures of ex parte communications from council members. Sue? I talked to Steve Quaratani.
I had a conversation with Steve Cortani.
I met with Thomas Schiller, spoke with Larry Noakes, and spoke with Steve Guartani.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing and we're going to have a staff presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Renagi. My name is Martina Carone, Principal Planner for the project, and I'm introducing Appeal A, which is the Appeal of Design Review 230887, Variance 230888, Revocable Encroachment Permit 230889, and an approval at 1560 Sunset Ridge. The project site is located at the end of Sunset Ridge off Panorama Drive. The site is approximately 7,200 square feet, and it's located in the R1 residential zone. It's developed with a 3,649 square foot, 4-story residence and a 3-car garage. County records indicate that the original structure was constructed around 1949, but it was under county jurisdiction, so we don't have original building permits on file. The earliest city record shows in 1951 for a sewer permit, and there also shows records for construction at the home in 1974 and 1984. The property is surrounded by other single-family residences and the Laguna Beach County Water District storage facility to the south, and the site maintains a steep upward slope, which is over 40%. After 2 hearings, the Design Review Board heard the project, which was on October 26, 2023, and February 8th, 2024, and the project was approved with conditions. The project includes additions to all 4 levels of the home, new deck areas, a new elevator corridor, and elevator shaft, which is proposed to connect to a new basement mechanical area and also provide access to the 4th level of the home from the lowest level of the home. Design review is required for additions, including upper level additions, elevated decks, grading, retaining walls, a spa, exterior remodel, and landscaping. Revocable encroachment permit was approved for site walls in the public right-of-way. The board has also approved a variance to exceed the maximum building height limit for the project. And as a note, the 2nd level of this home is proposed to be converted to an ADU. However, this conversion was not subject to design review. On the next several slides, I'm going to walk through the project, so hopefully the council will have a good understanding of what got approved at the board. This slide shows the south elevation or the right elevation. The areas in blue outline the existing home. The areas in green show the additions, and the pink areas show the approved deck areas. As you can see, there are additions proposed on all 4 levels of the home. This is a similar graphic to represent the north or left elevation, and it shows primarily the additions are underneath the home with an addition on the 4th level and new deck areas. I'm going to walk through floor by floor to get a better picture of where the additions were proposed, which are, as I noted, primarily to the rear of the structure until the 4th level. At the 1st level, this slide demonstrates the existing floor plan compared to the approved floor plan, which shows the additions in green. The addition at the lower level will provide a new mechanical area and a hallway to an elevator corridor that will provide access throughout the structure. There is also a small section on the corner of the slide that represents the area where the additions approved in an elevation view. On the 2nd level, the applicant proposes additions underneath the structure at the rear.
Tina, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the last slide? I just want to make sure I'm keeping up with you here. So these additions, so you have the garage in the front, right? And then we have behind the garage, we have this basement what's there now?
There's nothing there. So here on this existing floor plan, you can see, and I tried to line them up for comparison, but this wall, I think it moved slightly. This rear wall of the garage is here. So you can see there's nothing back here currently. So the applicant's proposing to excavate back this mechanical space in the elevator corridor to approximately right here as it's
How
shown.
big is that whole total space, do you know?
I'd have to double check. I can
Okay.
get that for you.
Okay.
On the 2nd level, the applicant's also proposing construction underneath the structure to push back that existing level into the hillside. This level is going to be converted primarily to an ADU, but there is hallway and access areas proposed to service the single-family residence as well. On the 3rd level of the home, another addition is proposed into the hillside and will provide a remodeled area with a new kitchen and main living areas of the house, as those are being relocated to accommodate the ADU. And new deck areas were also proposed on the ocean side of the structure. And on the upper or fourth level of the home, additions are proposed on the oceanward side of the structure, as well as a new deck. And this is proposed to provide, there are already several bedrooms identified, but a new master bedroom and living area is proposed at the top level.
Martina, before you go there, so the elevator shaft comes all the way up, and is that it on the left
That's correct.
edge of the kind of the dark box around there, right there?
Yes, this is the elevator shaft, and then this would be the stairway that also provides access from virtually the second level of the home all the way to the top level of the
Spiral staircase.
spiral staircase.
Okay.
That's correct. As part of the design review board's approval, they did consider and approve a variance to exceed the maximum height level limits for the structure. The property maintains a 30-foot height limit, and the proposed additions exceed that height limit. At the second hearing on February 8th, the applicant presented a plan that showed a modified design, which pulled back some of the previously proposed addition so that the upper level no longer stacked vertically above the basement area, eliminating much of what was driving the variance initially, but there were still portions of the area where the stairwell and the elevator and the area around the stairwell, as well as the new proposed deck, would still exceed the height limit above the lowest finished floor. The red area shows those areas, the additions that require a new variance as part of new construction. Ultimately, when the applicant is proposed to dig out the lower level of the structure and expand back, it would modify the existing height limit for the structure as we measure from lowest finished floor in this situation as the most restrictive condition. So it also rendered the portion of the existing structure shown here in blue as a non-conforming condition where it would no longer comply with the height limit at that location. This slide was put together. We thought we would try to demonstrate how the upper level and the lowest level stack up on top of each other. It's a little bit hard to grasp how the house is designed because there are so many levels and they step back. But ultimately, this graphic shows the proposed basement area, which is outlined in the black, and then the pink area represents the proposed deck on the top floor and the additions proposed on the top floor. So this it superimposes the modifications on the top floor over the floor plan on the lowest level. This also now identifies the areas requiring a variance within that footprint. So the areas in red here demonstrate what requires a variance on that top level. This shows the
sorry, Martina, go back to one. So the area, what's the pink?
The pink is deck area. So the proposed deck is this whole area. However, the basement only stacks below where the red is outlined.
Right.
So this area of the deck does not require a variance, but this area it does because it stacks over that mechanical area.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
This shows the proposed variance in two different exhibits. The one on the left, which would be section D, shows that the limitation of the proposed variance for the structure is limited to that north portion where it stacks above the elevator in the mechanical area, where and it's provided to demonstrate that the entire addition on the top floor doesn't require a variance. It's only that portion where that corridor extends specifically because it was pulled back to not stack vertically above the mechanical area. And the other section was provided by the board for consideration, and that identifies part of the existing structure that now requires a variance, and then the new area that also requires a variance.
So that, on that picture there, that's just the elevator and stairwell?
At this section, yes. So that would be, it was cut more back toward the back of the structure where it's just through the elevator shaft.
So what is again on the top level that requires a variance? This elevator shaft, clearly, but
So it would be of the living area, what was approved was the stairwell, this landing space, the elevator, and there's a corner here that's a portion of, it's a living area. It's not very large, but this is the only area on the 4th level requiring a variance. The green area is the addition proposed. However, that does not require a variance.
And what about the red?
The red is the deck here out in the front, and that's also requiring the variance for the rails to exceed that height limit.
Okay, so you need a deck variance and the elevator stairwell
That's
variance.
correct.
Both, yeah, okay.
During the design review hearing, which the last hearing on February 8th, 2024, the applicant presented a reduced deck design and an additional reduced deck design at the hearing, which was identified as Exhibit B. This is demonstrated here. So when the board ultimately approved the project, there was a vote of 4-0 to adopt the resolution, but subject to the deck design in Exhibit B1, and also 3 specific project conditions were included. After the project was approved on February 22nd, 2024, the neighboring property owners, the Bouloses, filed an appeal, which is attachment 4 to the agenda report, and the board's approval of the project lists several different co-appellants in the notice of the appeal, which include the Packards, the Liberatis, the Schillers, and the Triggs. This map identifies their proximity to the applicant, and they were all represented initially by Larry Noakes, and he provided correspondence collectively for the appellants under the initial appeal. The initial appeal included 9 contentions. We've sort of separated them out into 2 separate categories, and the staff report addresses them that way. The first set of 4 appeal contentions primarily deal with the approval of the variance. And I won't read them through, and I know the staff report goes into much detail about them and provides responses to the contentions, but as these are related to the variance, they are subject to a de novo review. Ultimately, as I noted, the staff report goes into detail, but the board extensively discussed the need for the variances at both the hearings on October 26, 2023, and the hearing on February 8th, 2024. The board looked at different cross sections, some of them identified here, others in the staff report, and also in the design review board staff reports that described and provided exhibits for the required variances. The board considered the need to connect the 4 floors by stairs and an elevator and accommodate aging in place. The board considered the unique shape of the lot and its topography. The board also considered the applicant's reductions to the deck on the 4th floor and as it was presented at the hearing. The board made oral and written findings of its own. And lastly, during the hearing, staff further verified that the revised design did not encroach into the additional building setback. Staff has also recently reviewed this contention and also still confirms that the project does not encroach into the additional building setback. Lastly, the exhibits reviewed during the hearing clearly identified the areas of the variance, and there was no confusion in this regard. Figure 11 in the May 14th staff report, which is 180 of the agenda bill, includes that exhibit. And then there were additional appeal contentions that related to the design review criteria, specifically as it related to design articulation, general plan compliance, neighborhood compatibility, privacy, and view equity. Since the board did approve this project at a 4-0 vote on these issues that relate to the design review criteria, the council shall not conduct a de novo hearing. The staff report provides contentions to the design review criteria issues. However, it identifies that the board members discussed how the project is consistent with the criteria throughout the hearings and in the staff report. The staff report provided to the board detailed each criteria and the design objectives and applicable general plan policies. And after reviewing the record, staff believes that the board proceeded in a manner required by law and that the board's decision is supported by substantial evidence in the record. After the staff report was published for the May 14th, 2024 hearing, which was when the appeal was originally scheduled, the representatives for both the applicant and the appellants indicated they were going to work to try to find an agreement to ultimately remedy the appeal. So the project was continued on the May 14th hearing to the July 23rd, 2024 hearing. City Council also continued the project on July 23rd to the October 22nd hearing and to the December 10th, 2024 council meeting. On January 9th, 2025, just before the December 10th, so a staff report was prepared for the December 10th city council meeting. However, ultimately an agreement was not met and the project was continued to tonight's date. On January 9th, the representative for the applicant indicated that the agreement would not be made and there were additional appeal contentions that still needed to be reviewed and requested that the appeal be heard. I'm going to recap shortly the staff report that was published for the December 10th council meeting included a list of the restrictive conditions, but ultimately, the restrictive conditions, but ultimately an agreement was not made. The staff report, or attached to the staff report, pages 352 to 353 lists the conditions, and the resolution that was prepared for that meeting is attached as page 356. They primarily go through and discuss modifications to the upper level area, the roof, the stairwell area, and also some of the deck areas, as well as some planter changes and identify how floor areas were reduced on each of the levels. This graphic demonstrates how the design changes with the restrictive conditions would, what design changes would occur. The purple areas ultimately were pulled back and the living area reduced on the upper level. The applicant has indicated that the restrictive conditions have been staked as well as the original approval has been staked. The original staking ribbons were faded to white. The new staking includes pink ribbons for the roof and green ribbons for the deck rails, and also includes red angled ribbons on the new staking. So tonight, because I wanted to point out we are reviewing the appeal as originally submitted, but there was also additional correspondence submitted to the city, including several of the contentions by Mr. Schiller, who did not come to an agreement with, like the other appellants. The original appeal contentions are listed here on the left, and as identified in the letter, Mr. Schiller's contentions are listed here on the right. Ultimately, the contentions listed by Mr. Schiller are fairly consistent, if not the same as some of the contentions that were originally submitted, and the staff report pages where these contentions were addressed is identified here on this table. It's staff's recommendation that the City Council adopt a resolution this evening modifying the board's decision to approve the project and add a more restrictive condition, which requires a conditional use or a coastal development permit be provided for the ADU, as it's a new requirement for ADU processing, and find the project exempt from CEQA. And the staff report goes through, and I'll leave this slide up here for review, which includes the council's options while hearing the appeal this evening. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Martina. Very, very comprehensive staff presentation. I don't want to even ask how long it took to, how many hours you spent on this item.
Just, it wasn't too long.
Okay.
It's just a little while.
Well, good job. So are there any questions of staff at this point? No.
Can I just make a point of clarification? As presented, the resolution does not have the more restrictive conditions that were agreed to by the majority of the appellants. So they are listeners' efforts. So if you ultimately want to consider those, you would need to add them to the resolution tonight.
Okay. Sounds good. So if there's no questions, and I'm going to open public testimony, and we'll start with the appellant presentation where, and typically there's, 5 appellants here that it would be 5 minutes total, but since there's sort of a divide in the group, I'm going to give 5 minutes to the representative, to Mr. Noakes, and then 5 minutes to Mr. Schiller's representative. So whatever order you want to do, but, and then everyone else will be able to speak during the 3-minute public comment. So you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Alex. I just want to make sure that David Palmer also gets 5 minutes. Or I can take 3 minutes now and he can have my 5 minutes.
Are you representing him?
No, David Palmer is the lawyer for Mr. Schiller.
Yeah, so he's going to get 5 minutes. So
Perfect.
There's 5 appellants, right? And there's sort of,
Correct.
and you're representing 4 of them.
Correct.
And he's representing 1 of them. Each of you will get 5 minutes.
Thank
and then everyone else can have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, council, mayor, council members. I'm Larry Noakes, and I wrote the original appeal document. And I'm speaking on behalf of 4 of the neighbors. It's obvious that the unanimous approval of this project as originally prepared by design review was not very popular with the neighbors. The elements of the project that were approved directly and indirectly impacted all of the neighbors in the area. And perhaps the heaviest impact was on Mr. and Mrs. Boulos, who live immediately next door, but I'm not minimizing any of the impacts on any of the other neighbors. After filing the appeal, I engaged with Mr. Kawaratani and Mr. Parker, and leaving aside the issues relating to the variance findings, what we did is we tried to identify the elements of the building that were offensive and problematic for the neighbors, and then saw what we could do to address those. And these included the relocation of the elevator and stair complex. And when that was originally approved by design review, it was just this looming monster up above the Boulos deck that was just looked like a, I don't know, looked like something you would use for military purposes. But that needed to be addressed. Also, there was an issue with regard to the deck size. All of the decks, the upper deck, the middle deck, the lower deck were all problematic. And then there were issues relating to the roof height and then the distance that the roof protruded outward. After months of discussion and drawing and redrawing, we were finally able to get resolution on most of these issues. We were not able to get anywhere on the reduction of the roof height or the location of the leading edge of the roof, although that over time had been brought back as well. But after numerous site visits and restaking and looking at things, we were able, I think, to get rid of at least the majority of those things that were causing major problems. And as I stated, Mr. Schiller continues to have concerns, and those concerns will be pointed out by Mr. Palmer. And Mr. and Mrs. Packard have also submitted a letter indicating that they continue to have some problems with the exterior decks and the overall height of the building. If this appeal is denied and the project is approved tonight, we would request that the council condition the approval at a minimum upon the implementation of all of the modifications to which the applicant team committed. And these are set forth in the December 10th staff report, although Megan indicated that they haven't made their way into the proposed resolution yet and will need to do so. And I think Steve Kawaratani will more fully point those out. But we would request that the design as it was originally approved not be approved, as originally proposed by design review not be approved, that if this is approved at all, it be approved with the conditions that have been discussed between our team and Mr. Kawaratani, and that otherwise the appeal be granted and the matter be remanded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Put up the Schiller PowerPoint, please.
It's the other one. Yeah. Should be the second one.
has my name on the front.
Put up the other PowerPoint that I gave you.
Oh, this one.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Here is the correct PowerPoint. Always bring a backup of your presentation. All right. So members of the council, Mr. Mayor, good evening. My name is David Palmer and I am here representing Thomas Schiller in this appeal. And if you could go to the next slide, please, I am going to jump right into it. The biggest, most glaring issue with this approval is the height variance. And I want to start with the standard of review, which is de novo review, meaning you will exercise your independent judgment to decide if this building deserves a height variance. You should not and cannot be bound by what the DRB found here. Next slide, please. So there's no debate that this proposed building exceeds the maximum height. In the R1 zone, the maximum height is 30 feet by the Muni Code. And throughout all of Laguna Beach, the maximum height of any building is 36 feet. And you can see, taken from the staff report, the proposed height is 49 7/7. That required the variance. Go ahead, next slide. So there are 4 findings that had to be made to grant the variance. We're going to go through these. The first one is special circumstances where the strict application of the zoning ordinance would deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other property in the vicinity. That's the important key. Does it deprive the property of something else enjoyed? Well, pictures speak 1,000 words. Next slide, please. Here's the aerial view. No difference. Next slide. Google Street View. No difference. Next slide. But the DRB found that a special circumstance existed because of the topography. Well, it is saying the utilized space below the ground within the footprint because of the topography. But the topography is the same, next slide please, as the entire neighborhood and the surrounding structure. The property is already currently the tallest building in the area, possibly in all of Laguna Beach. And while there's mention of other homes on Sunset Ridge having 3 to 4 stories, those homes are not as tall as the proposed project. In fact, Mr. Packard, who was alluded to earlier, sent correspondence. His home is 23 feet. He lives at 1550 Sunset Ridge, and he was forced to keep it at that height when he was doing work on his home. Next slide, please. So this is a picture from the applicant's proposal. Seeing the 3 houses there. Next slide. Using the same view, just drawing lines where the proposed height is, it is obvious that this is a special privilege being granted via this variance to the applicant. Next slide, please. You can see it again from here, looking down. And by the way, the slope runs down towards the applicant's home from 1550. Next slide.
David, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Can you go back a couple slides? Next one back. So where is Mr. Schiller's house?
Mr. Schiller's house is directly behind.
Is it this gray one? With
Yes.
The sloping roof, okay.
Directly behind. And I would just point out that if you notice the tree next door, it almost looks like this second house is just as tall, but there's a tree and a retaining wall in the back of that picture. You could go forward a couple more slides, please. So that's it on the first element. There's just no special condition that requires this property to have it. It's the same as all the rest. Next finding, is there preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant, which right is possessed by other property owners? They found that because of the topographical conditions, believes that below grade building was appropriate. Next slide, please. That doesn't do with preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right. You don't have a right to build on undeveloped space just because you have it. You can't move the front of your house to the edge of your property line. We have setbacks. We have height restrictions. Property has 4 floors and a deck already. And the architect initially stated to the DRB that the height structure would not increase. And the second variance to create the basement in Southern California is a special privilege. And the case law is clear. If you're granting a special privilege, the variance can't be granted. All of the other neighbors have the same height restrictions. They all have the same topography. This house is already tall. If they just kept it as is, the neighbors could probably reach an agreement with everybody else. And the 2 more findings, if we go to the next slide real quick, I'll just jump through these real quick. Variance is not detrimental to public health. They found that it wasn't because it was constructed in a manner consistent with latest building codes. Next slide. It's got a detrimental impact on the neighbors. You've seen 10 plus correspondence today from neighbors. It has that impact. Next slide. And I would just say in granting the variance would not be contrary. Essentially circular logic here. Staff found that because the variance was granted, it would not be contrary to the zoning ordinance or the general plan. Next slide. And that is it on the variance. The height variance is a special privilege. It is inappropriate for this property. It's already the tallest. The findings do not support it. The case law is clear. You're granting a special privilege. It is inappropriate. The appeal must be granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll hear from anyone in support of the appeal, which would mean in this case opposition to the project, and you will each have 3 minutes to provide public testimony.
Thank you. Good evening, council. My name is Tom Schiller. I'm a 20-year resident. I live at 429 Panorama Drive. I thought I had 5 minutes. I can blitz through this in hopefully 3. Next slide. I think you know the core issue. It's really about height and mass and scale. Next slide. My contention is there's been, I think everyone would recognize this is a complex project and there's been a lot of confusion along the way. Next slide. You know the 36-foot issue, and I still don't know the height of this building. I heard 49 feet. I've heard 51. I've seen 53. I want to point out some of the comments that this applicant team has made to the DRB. It's not impacting the height. It doesn't increase the height of the building at all. Everything happens underground. These were things I heard. Next slide. It's the building, we're not exceeding the building footprint. We're actually within the footprint of the existing house. We're not projecting above the roof. Next slide. Staking says otherwise. Next slide. This picture was shown to the DRB on these big screens. And what you can see, next slide, is the idea is the roofs are comparable. Next slide. When in fact, the house on the right, what we're talking about, 1560 Sunset Ridge, is 15% taller as is today and is one of the tallest structures in Laguna Beach as is. Next slide. And the plan would be to push it even higher. My estimate is 53.2 feet, which would be a 20% increase over the neighboring homes, and 131% versus Mr. Packard's home, which is to the right, just to the south. Next slide. Another comment, mitigates all privacy and view impacts. We heard that. 30 neighbors said otherwise. Next slide. And still are saying otherwise. View equity was achieved, no more mass. There is mass. Next slide, you can see it. What I'd like to get to, in fact, keep going. I know I'm limited on time here. These were the 29 neighbors surrounding this home who earlier this year were quite vocal against this project, given the height and the mass and scale. No one supported this program. Next slide. Okay, so we're now in January 2025. Where are we? You're going to hear tonight some support for the project. Nevertheless, the height has not changed from the DRB level. Same height, same mass and scale issues. I had proposed, in the interest of saving everyone's time here tonight, that the applicant reduce the height of the barrel roof by 1 foot out of 53 feet and pull back the expansiveness by 5 feet, which I think would be about half. They said, no, let's let the council decide. Here we are. Next slide. Do I have 1 more minute?
Why don't here, we'll give you 45 seconds. If
Great.
that works.
I do want to show you this. You're probably wondering, why is Mr. Schiller fighting this fight? This is my view out to Emerald Bay as is. And if you click one more, this is what, at a minimal impact, the additional roofing would look like, we think. Barrel roof, and it would be actually much higher than this, probably 15 to 20 inches higher and closer to us. Importantly, with windows staring backwards into our patio area and our living room space. And so that, to me, is the biggest issue. It's mass and scale, and I think, again, you're hearing that from neighbors all around the area. Next slide. So our ask is if the council could reject the height variance. I'd be happy to work with the applicant further and trying to come up with a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in opposition to the project and in support of the appeal? You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Mike Anderson. I'm the owner and a resident of 433 Panorama Drive, directly above the home under contention right now, and adjacent immediately to Mr. Tom Schiller's property. In fact, we have a lot that is a conjoined lot to allow for an ingress egress with one driveway serving both homes. And as such, anything that affects Mr. Schiller's home affects mine as well. There are other homes right on the same street, same curve with us along Panorama Drive. They would be affected as well because they're comps to our homes, and as is Mr. Schiller's. So the problem we see is, of course, the height variance. Again, same thing, same problem. And as far as Mr. Schiller's situation too, the immediate scale to that deck on top is not a good thing for him at all. Just wondering if the square footage of that could be reduced, as well as the height. Every time I look into this matter, the height of this thing seems to increase. It seems to bounce all over the place. Now, I've heard 53 feet or a little over. Now, that's a whopping 17 feet or so over, a variance over Laguna's maximum building height. So, the question is, just how many more variances should a non-conforming house, already non-conforming house, be allowed to, expand even further? And I haven't heard in many of these discussions much of anything other than the very first one about the effects to the residents, myself included, on Panorama Drive, because we all look at that same area above the 1560, and it's it's a problem for us as well. So thank you.
Any other speakers in support of the appeal? Okay, then we're going to move on. We're going to give 5 minutes to the applicant to provide a presentation. Mr. Quaratani.
Good evening, Mayor Alex and council members. My name is Steve Kawaratani. Okay, you already have my slides up. Thank you. The property at 1560 Sunset Ridge was originally developed using the upper driveway access. When the road was extended, the lower addition was added. This resulted in a very awkward design from both a livability and design perspective. Our architect, David Parker, has reimagined this into a cohesive, neighborhood-compatible design, maintaining the similar 4-level layout and decks as the adjacent properties. The Design Review Board approved the plans 4-0, and the council's role in this non-de novo appeal is to evaluate the board's decision and whether within its purview it was reasonable and free from abuse of discretion. The burden of proving otherwise lies with the applicant. With the appellant. I disagree with the appellant's contention, which inaccurately claims significant impact. The roof height has not changed since the first board meeting in October 2023, and it poses no significant impairment. The appellant has not demonstrated that the board's decision was unreasonable or invalid. The agenda report from May 14th, 2024 supports the variances granted by the board, noting that topography justified the need for an elevator, and that's central. We need an elevator. There are 70 steps, and it was not a special privilege. Privacy and view equity issues were considered through site visits, and we believe that the variance approval conforms with the municipal code and the general plan. Larry Noakes and I have effectively resolved differences in prior city council appeals. He represented the interests of all of his clients before we reached an agreement outlined in the December 10th, 2024 agenda report. And that includes reductions of decks, stairwell location, and adjustments to the roof on behalf of his clients that the applicant team supports. Next slide, please. Following a continuance request, so that's not the slide I wanted, but let's just leave that one up there. Following a continuance request of the Design Review Board hearing, the barrel roof was lowered by a foot to improve neighboring views and has remained at the certified height of 291.6 at its highest point, which is an increase of 15 inches. Additionally, the southwest corner was moved 6 feet to the east to improve the Liberati view up the coast. The roof height request is necessary as you look at this image, as the existing home does not provide code-compliant head clearance for the proposed upper-level stairwell and the elevator. Next slide. During the approval process, the west edge of the roof was shifted 1.5 feet to the east away from the ocean. And in our agreement with Mr. Noakes, the northwest corner of the roof was moved an additional 7 feet, 7 inches to the east and 8 feet to the south. So that area in red is where that occurred. The upper level deck was reduced from 781 square feet to the proposed of 327 square feet currently with our agreement with Mr. Noakes. The mid-level deck has not changed from the original size, and the first level deck was reduced to the existing size and configuration. Last slide. In conclusion, every picture tells a story, and the appellant has failed to demonstrate that the DRB approval was unreasonable, invalid, or an abuse of discretion. I thank Larry Noakes for working in good faith with us for the benefit of the neighborhood and neighbors, and the City Council for their anticipated denial of the appeal of the design review approval. Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
So I wish, in some ways, I wish you were right that we could look at this from an abuse of discretion, but the variance is a de novo. We have to make findings that on a de novo basis for that.
Yes.
So my question is, is it possible, one, is it possible to build this project with the elevator without the variance? And number two, and then number two, did you attempt, as you were designing this, to design this without a variance?
Right, so the elevator has always required a variance because it exceeds the 36 feet maximum height for an elevator. And so in order to connect the house from the garage up to the very top, we require a variance for that, Alex. There's no way of eliminating it. You know, it's an existing nonconformity. And right now, I think you joined us, and you're certainly only 26, so you had no issue scaling scaling 70 steps. And maybe I was huffing and puffing a little bit behind you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So I guess the answer to the second question is you did not try to design this without a variance.
Well, it's not possible with the elevator, Alex. I hope I'm clear on that.
Got it.
Okay. And probably lastly, right now, we have a non-conforming head height with the stairwell. And if we were to leave the roof the way it is now, the head clearance is only 6 feet, and that's non-conforming. Okay, thank you.
Now we'll give 3 minutes to any members of the public who'd like to speak in opposition to the appeal and in support of the project.
Good evening, council members. I'm David Parker. I'm the architect for this project. And could we continue the slideshow? I have slides that are piggybacked onto Mr. Kawaratani's. Could you bring up the last slide, please? Need to advance to where Mr. Kawaratani left off, please. Next slide. That's it. Okay, I wanted to discuss the process that we went through with Mr. Noakes, and I would like to thank Mr. Noakes and the Bolas for working with us and coming to an agreement. We started to look at how our house is related to the other two homes in terms of string lines. Those blue lines are projected from the upper floor and the upper deck, and the dark blue on our house is where the current existing upper floor is, which used to be a single house, and there was an addition that cascaded down to the lower level. So you can see how the dark blue area, the existing house, is behind the string lines, but our addition comes right up to it, and the yellow area is our deck, which comes just barely past it. Also, the red line is a string line from the Bolas master bedroom. So we were asked to stay behind all these string lines, and particularly with the stair, we were asked to move behind the red line. Next slide, please. This shows how we accomplished that. Those green lines are the string lines. The yellow area is what was originally submitted to the board, and we pulled it back 18 inches. The red area is what was also approved by the board, but we pulled it back behind the third string line, number C, and we also pulled the north-facing wall back 8 feet on the right side of the red area. And so you can see we notched the corner of our house so that we could pull it farther away from the Bolas and pull the stair farther away so we wouldn't be intruding down into their yard and we wouldn't be able to see down into their yard. And lastly, that red line on the right is a 3-foot-high parapet, which we analyzed on site that screens the view looking into their balcony. The blue area is the portion of the upper floor that sits above the lower elevator and the corridor leading to it. That is the area that generates the variance at the addition. Next slide, please. This shows how the decks were reduced. The purple is what was presented to the board at the first hearing. The red is what was approved. And then the blue is what we've reduced it to farther for Mr. Noakes and the Bolos. And this also reflects the stair reduction. Next. We also reduced the lower level. We went back to the existing lower deck. Next slide, please. We adjusted the curve so that it's lower. It comes down to 7'6" on the left. The yellow area is what used to be. We pulled back 8 feet and we created an eave where there was none before, and at the Bolos' request, we lowered it 9 inches. Next slide. So we've seen this before, but the purpose of this is to show how neighborhood compatible the house is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for you. What, the existing 4th level, is there any access to the 3rd level currently?
The existing 4th level?
Yeah, how do you get from that down to the lower parts of the house?
There are steps that take us from the lower part all the way up to the 3rd level. And if
So
I
how
may,
do you get to the top level?
from there are concrete steps that lead up to the 1st level, and then there's a series of stairs, interior stairs that take you to the top level.
Top level, interior stairway. So there's
existing.
an existing stairway there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? So I guess how much, what's the increase in height from where the roof is now to where you're proposing?
The highest existing ridge is 290.4. We're proposing to raise the high point of the barrel 15 inches above that. The ridge goes horizontal. The high point of the barrel is perpendicular, and it curves downward.
So you're increasing the height by 15 inches?
15 inches.
Got it. Thank you. I don't have any. Does anyone else have questions? Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in support of the project? 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Bruce Rajai. I own the subject property. I'm married with 3 children, and ever since high school, I've dreamed of living in Laguna Beach. And this became a reality in 2020 when I purchased a home. This house is in a beautiful location built on a hill surrounded by beautiful upscale homes, as you know. But it is a very dysfunctional condition. The stairs are dangerous and have a history of falling incidents. I'm 64 years old with 2 replaced knees, and I'll be living with my in-laws who are elderly and definitely worse condition than me. So having an elevator from the garage to the top is essential. My team and I began working on these plans to improve the home in 2021. That's when we started. After many delays due to COVID, staff shortage, DRB delays, and appeal delays, here we are 3 years later. We are expanding the front upper floor by only 6 feet and raising the upper level roof ridge 15 inches, as you asked, Mr. Mayor, at the peak, making the interior ceiling in the middle, the highest point is 9 feet, and at the ends of it is 7 feet and 9 inches. We made significant design concession during the review process to address a neighbor's concern, and as a result, we were unanimously approved in April of last year. Unfortunately, we were appealed. Since the appeal, we further reduced our plans to accommodate neighbors' concerns even more. While this is going on, Mr. Schiller, the appellant at 429 Panorama, also proposed an expansion of their home that would significantly affect my privacy in the back bedroom and in our backyard. Because their house, as you asked, Ms. Kemp, 15 feet higher than ours. So they could just see right through our house and the yard. After their first DRB hearing, they made some adjustment, but they did not address my privacy concerns. After the first hearing, Schiller's architect, Jim Conrad, and my advisor, Steve, suggested that if I do not oppose their project, they would agree to drop their appeal at my house. However, after I agreed, they waited for the 2-week appeal period to pass, and then they proceeded with the appeal on my project, even though they had agreed not to. It is important to note that the Schillers have no ocean view impact and have no privacy issue at all as a result of what we're doing. In conclusion, our project has unanimous DRB approval and has been further modified to satisfy the appellant. I strongly urge you to uphold the unanimous design review approval, especially after all the concessions we've made. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers in support of the project? If not, at this time, I'll give both I'll give 2 minutes to each of the representatives for the appellants to provide rebuttal, and then, yeah, so if you can have 2 minutes, and then Mr. Schiller's attorney can have 2 minutes.
Yeah, good evening again, council. I just wanted to make clear that while we had requested a reduction in the roof height and a bringing back of the front eave, that was the one thing that we were not able to get agreement on. And I just wanted to make it clear that Mr. Schiller did not ever agree to the arrangements that we had made for the other neighbors with regard to the deck size and the location of the stairways. But we wanted to make sure that all of his issues were preserved for purpose of this appeal so that he could argue everything for any benefit that he wanted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to start by answering your question, Mr. Mayor. Can this project be built without an elevator going all the way to the fourth level? Yes. How do I know that? 1570 and 1580 Sunset Ridge don't have their elevators going to the top floor. They stop at the third floor. Both properties went through design review in 2005. This project doesn't need an elevator. I understand it's the applicant's dream to live in Laguna Beach, but his dream can't destroy the dreams of his neighbors to enjoy their view, enjoy their property, enjoy their neighborhood the way that it is. We heard things about a head clearance non-conforming use. This property is already a non-conforming use on the height, and they want to push it higher. That's the problem. The problem is there's already significant property rights in the non-conforming use that they want to push even higher to 15 inches. Can the project be built without going 15 inches up? Absolutely. Can it be built without a variance for an elevator? Absolutely. And, they say they've reduced a lot of their sizes. Remember, the project, when initially presented, was a monster in size and scale, and simply reducing doesn't change the fact that it's still a monster. It's just a little bit smaller. It still has the same impacts, and it still comes back to that variance. Is that variance granting this property a special privilege that its neighbors do not enjoy? Absolutely. They get to go to the fourth floor. They get to raise their roof 15 inches well beyond the municipal code. They're saying their non-conforming use lets them build essentially whatever they want in that hillside. That is not how it works. There were findings that were inappropriate to support the variance, and the appeal must be granted. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. Packard, by the way, sent you guys an email a few days ago. He's one of the appellants. It's pretty clear that he still is in opposition to this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Close public comment, and we're going to go to staff with questions. Are there any questions? Bob?
So I want to go back to the variance and look at the fourth floor. And the applicant just showed us the elevator is requiring a variance, but in the resolution that's prepared, there's 2 variance areas that are outlined. So my question is, well, show us the picture, please, but if the modifications that were in the December 10 staff report are accepted, does that affect the variance area? Reduce it?
Slightly, yes, slightly. I have a graphic and I think, let me just run back to it. I think this demonstrates it. So the area in green represents the lowest level addition for the mechanical area in the corridor. This is a floor plan for the upper level. It shows the addition in the gray that they're proposing. The deck area is the pink. What's outlined in the red demonstrates what would have needed the variance. This purple area here is what has been modified through the restrictive conditions that were proposed by the applicant, and it reduces the overall size of the corridor area and the area around the staircase. It reduces it, so in a way it would reduce the variance.
So there's two variance areas, the rectangle on the front
Mhm.
and then the stairway,
The stairway.
stairwell and elevator.
Right. So previously this variance
Even with
area
the
was-
December 10 modifications.
Correct.
Right.
And I would also point out that even with the reduction on the fourth level, the area at the third level in the existing structure would still require the variance as well, based on the mechanical area being expanded and that height measurement dropping.
So there's basically two. One is the variance that goes 15 inches above the current height, right? That's one.
So the area where it exceeds the height limit or of the existing roof, 15 inches, actually does not require a variance. It's concentrated in the center of the structure and away from the corridor. But the area, I'll show you, I have one exhibit. This shows it. Was that cross section? I'm sorry. 1 second. Here, so the area where the roof is of the barrel roof is the highest is the midpoint here, and this point is what is 15 feet higher than the existing ridge line.
Okay.
As it moves over, this area, I think, if I recall, is slightly over the existing ridge height, but it's not as high as the midpoint of the roof. But because of the way that the property is designed and that variance at that top level really only extends in the living area where the corridor is, it doesn't extend across to include this ridge line.
Because there wasn't any excavation on the lowest level.
Correct, underneath
for the
that
part of
height.
the room.
That's correct.
So it's really the excavation at the lowest level that's driving that.
For that and then
that one.
underneath the deck. That's
Yeah,
correct.
And then underneath the deck, yeah, okay.
And I have the information, Councilmember Kempf noted she was curious what the floor area was for the lowest level. The basement area is 518 and the corridor area is 150, which totals at 668, but the basement area is 518.
Martina, are there other homes? I mean, I was up in that area today and I walked on that private road behind the house and I looked around the neighborhood, but are there other houses that exceed the height limit in the neighborhood?
Most likely, yes. I didn't do a direct study, but just based on historical construction and just like this one, there's probably others that do.
Yeah, I saw
currently.
some really tall houses.
And some of them may have been constructed prior to, the current way that we measure height, which takes it from the lowest finished floor. We used to
Yeah.
take it from the outside of the building, so it didn't always account for conditions like this. So I would guess there definitely would be.
And when I was on that private road today, I was looking at the height of the Boulis's house and the height of the applicant's house, and the applicant's house is already higher.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Here are my thoughts. We've got two parts of the appeal, the design review part and the variance part. The design review part, as was pointed out, it's not a de novo review, it's substantial evidence. I don't think I don't have any issue with the design review. I think that was fine. I don't find substantial error or abuse of discretion. But those are different standards that we're talking about. But with respect to the variance, you know, the result is a little harsh, but I don't see a basis for granting a variance on the fourth level, on the top level for this.
I think that's where I come down on this, because we have to make the finding that the variance is necessary for the preservation, enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant, which right is possessed by other property owners under like conditions in the same vicinity and zone. I don't think we can make the argument you have a property right to go 4 stories with the elevator. That's just
No, but I mean, the frustrating, so I don't think I can make the findings for the variance, but the frustrating part of it is, I mean, and I think probably the applicant should have taken Mr. Schiller up on his offer, because the work that Larry and Steve Quaratani did resolved all the other issues with the other repellents. But, you know, this is being driven by the fact that our code says, well, you got to count from the lowest, you know, finished level, which is all, nobody sees that. The neighbors will be and ought to be happy that this building is going to be renovated. It doesn't look very good. Currently, it's sort of the ugly duckling in the neighborhood. And, you know, if it was going to be revised, you know, you write in an existing structure, right? If you just were refinishing the exterior, not changing you're not doing excavation and not changing the height limit, it would look great. You know, it would be, and we wouldn't even be here because it wouldn't be requiring a variance or anything. So I think what ought to happen, I mean, I'm not going to vote to grant the variance, but I think what ought to happen is, you know, I don't think Mr. Schiller really has an objection to the elevator. I think they ought to figure out how to get rid of the, you know, the 1.5 foot height limit, height increase on the rest of the roof, and pull back the front of it and build the project. So.
Yeah, you know, I think I agree with you. And I also think that, you know, if you know, if the proposed plan was, the question was whether or not it was blocking a view, significant view, I would say no, it's not. It's not. I mean, I know that Mr. Schiller showed that diagram, but that's not what we consider a view blocker. That wouldn't be considered to be a view issue.
And I think under the view equity standard, the Design Review Board's got that exactly right. Yeah. That's not a view equity issue, but we're dealing with the variance.
No, but the variance I do have an issue with too.
I think we agree, Bob, but just clarify, you're saying that there's, which findings can you, just that there's, you can't make any of the findings. That's where I come down.
Well, I don't know if it's relevant. I mean, whether you can't make any of them, but you know, I think there's not a special circumstance here. You know, that that's necessary to preserve a substantial right that's enjoyed by other neighbors. We just don't have that on the record. So I don't think we can grant the variance because the you know, the 4 findings can't be made, those findings can't be made in any event. I do question our code. I mean, I do question our code. What's the rationale for counting from the lowest finished floor that's interior that nobody ever sees? I mean, we've had this come up on a couple other issues. I mean, maybe somebody could articulate a reason for it, but who cares, you know?
Yeah, it's a policy choice we should look at for sure. Yeah, I think it's,
so I guess the question really is, what should we do with this? I mean, I guess it sounds like there might, I think there, I don't know whether the applicant wants to respond or come up, but there might be an opportunity still for an agreement. You've got 4 of the 5, and I think Mr. Schiller has sort of proposed something that would work for him. We can either, I guess we'd probably need to remand it.
Yeah, I'd like to, I think we should remand it.
Or we could just deny it. Grant the appeal. And we can grant the appeal and remand, or we can not remand. I mean, it's up to the applicant, I think.
I think 3 years is enough. And I'm willing to make an adjustment to get through this because it's just been too long. So if Mr. Schiller wants to do this, we'll do it.
David, we need you to come up to
Here,
the
I'm gonna
mic
reopen the
because it's
public
on the
hearing.
record.
The recent statements by the applicant perhaps are remanded to the design review board to get a single clear set of plans before them for approval with all the agreements that have been reached would be the best course of action so that we actually know exactly what's being built.
Yeah, I think that's what I'd be supportive of. And I think in general, variances are something that there's a reason why we have to make findings for them. We make a good, I think our code has a lot of things that don't make sense in it, but when we have these variances and these big projects like this that are just pushing the envelope, I mean, you think about the amount of time that staff's had to spend on this and all the neighbors and everyone, and I just think it's not a good precedent for us to be granting variances without, even though I understand that in this case, the variance itself might not be the harm, but we have to make the findings. That's just how we have to follow the code. So I would move to,
May I
you want to
ask a
go? Yeah.
question? So Megan, I just want to make clear, and I want your opinion on this as well. So if we remand this back and the two parties work out a solution, whatever that solution is cannot include a variance.
You can give that direction in your remand, and it sounds like there is agreement that there should not be a variance.
Right,
that
so because the last agreement possibly that they had did include a partial variance.
Correct, yeah, so you can remand
So
it with.
it's going to be remanded back to design review, and whatever deal that gets worked out cannot include any
Well,
variances.
Not necessarily, because if they can make the findings, we're basically
Yeah.
saying we can't make the findings for this.
For this particular.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in concept, there's not a reason why they couldn't make findings if it were done in a different way, but
A different way. I just meant like the old deal. If they just came back to design review and they dropped that one portion 15 inches, like was it part of the deal that they had?
yeah. Well, if they could get the app, yeah, so I guess what we're saying is what I'm saying is we can't make the findings on the variance. So they couldn't do that, what you're saying.
Correct.
So any other discussion on this?
No.
So what I would do is I'd make a motion that we remand this, that we grant the,
I think it's 3 on your
yeah,
slide.
number
is it?
3. So I'd move that we direct staff to prepare a resolution granting the appeal, overturning the board's decision to approve the project specifically on due to our inability to make findings on the variance, and remand the project to the board with findings in support of overturning and remanding that decision.
Good job.
Thanks. Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I think when we do the comprehensive code update, we should think about elevators because we're all getting old.
Yeah. And I think the elevators. Get there.
Well, I think they could. I think. Because they're going to the bottom.
Does anyone have a council member item?
No.
No. So then I'm going to adjourn the meeting until our strategic planning workshop on Friday, January 31st at 8:30 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
Build structure.